Chapter 40:13. Kill him. Wu Luoxin's deep voice echoed in the crowd's ears like a clap of thunder. Nie Tian's pupils constricted as a rumbling sound echoed out in his head. He did not expect the first elders of the three clans to want his life. The eyes of Xie Tian Ichi and Jiutian Wangchuan flickered as their expressions stiffened. The atmosphere at the scene turned tense once again. Both Xie Tian Ichi and Jiutian Wangchuan wore gloomy expressions and remained silent for a long time. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he stared nervously at the two people with the highest positions in the Xie Tian clan. Their attitude would decide his life or death. If the first elders of the three clans wanted him dead, he would not stand a chance with his current strength. Do you two have the same thought? A moment later, Xie Tianichi spoke and asked Guiji, Long Xiang, and the Imperial Marshal Sunday Wu Luoxin had already stated his intention to take Nie Tian's life. Guiji and the Imperial Marshal Sun most likely had the same thought, but Xie Tianichi still had to ask. Clan leader Xie Tian, this kid is an outsider. It's an insult to the four ancient sacred clans to appoint him as the great priest. Guiji and Long Xiang spoke in a deep voice. Do you think the four ancient sacred clans will keep him alive if he can't become the great priest? An outsider's death is not to be regretted. The Imperial Marshal Sun's response was simple and firm. The attitude of the three clans was clear, they wanted Nie Tian dead. This is going to be troublesome. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian could not help but frown and smile bitterly in his heart. It would depend on how determined the Xie Tian clan was to protect him. Xie Tian Ichi's face was gloomy, and his eyes flickered with a cold light. He was like a terrifying lion. He did not speak for a long time, as if he was making a difficult decision. Indeed, it was an extremely difficult choice for him. He had a vague feeling that it was a choice that concerned the survival of the Parting Sky clan. Patriarch Xie Tian, is it difficult for you to kill an ant from another race? At this moment, Wu Luoxin seemed to have lost his patience. His eyes were cold as he looked at Xie Tian Ichi and said playfully. Xie Tian Ichi suddenly raised his head and a strange light flashed in his eyes. His face instantly turned cold as he stared at Wu Luoxin and said slowly, Nie Tian is the great priest of Xie Tian, not an ant. The deep voice resounded in everyone's ears like a clap of thunder from the 9 heavens, exploding with a loud bang. The faces of everyone present sank, and they were all stunned on the spot. They were completely speechless. Even Jiutian Wangchuan wore a shocked expression. Obviously, he did not expect Xie Tianichi to choose to protect Nie Tian. If they protected Nie Tian, it would mean that the Heaven Pardoning clan would become the enemy of the other three outsider races. Was it really worth it to completely fall out with the other three clans for a mere Nie Tian? Jiutian Wangchuan knew that Xie Tian Ichi hoped that the other three clans would acknowledge Nie Tian's identity, but he did not expect Xie Tian Ichi to place such importance on Nie Tian. Nie Tian, an outsider, was it really worth it for Xie Tian Ichi to bet the entire Pardon Sky clan? Patriarch Xie Tian, are you really going to go against the three clans for an outsider? Wu Luoxin's face darkened for a long time before he finally reacted and let out a cold growl. His body trembled slightly, showing his extreme anger. Patriarch Xie Tian, I don't know what's so important about this kid. Guiji Long Xiang's eyes flickered as he said, but I have to remind you that the decision you are making now is not only your own will, but also the will of the entire Pardon Sky clan. Therefore, your words will decide the future of the Pardon Sky clan. Between an outsider and the entire Pardon Sky clan, I don't think I need to tell you which is more important, right? Brother Guiji is right. Before Guiji and Xiang Dragon could finish their words, Imperial Marshal Divine Sun stood up and stared at Xie Tian Ichi with a gloomy expression. Clan Master Xie Tian, even if you don't think for yourself, you must think for the entire Xie Tian clan. Have you really thought about this decision? The three elders pressured Xie Tian Ichi together once again. They knew that if the three clans were to declare war against the Pardon Sky Clan, even if they won in the end, they would still have to pay a price. Therefore, the best scenario for them was to force the Pardon Sky Clan to kill Nyetian and obtain some benefits from the Pardon Sky Clan's compromise. They did not expect Xie Tianichi's attitude to be so firm. "I've thought it through clearly," Xie Tianichi spoke as soon as the Imperial Marshal Divine Sun finished speaking. His voice was cold and filled with extreme determination. This. Jiutian Wangchuan's expression darkened as his eyes trembled vigorously. He was at a loss for words. As the first elder, he had always supported Xie Tianichi and rarely disagreed with him. However, this time, the situation was too serious, thus he began to hesitate. "Patriarch Xie Tian, are you really going to insist on this?" Wu Luoxin's eyes darkened as the fat on his face trembled. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger. "It doesn't matter if the three clans admit it or not, Nye Tian is still the great oracle of the Pardon Sky Clan," Xie Tianichi said in a heavy tone. "Elder Xie Tian, do you agree with Patriarch Xie Tian's decision?" At that instant, Guiji Longxiang's eyes flickered slightly as he looked at Jiutian Wangchuan and asked, "I." Jiutian Wangchuan's expression stiffened. He did not know what to say. He was a smart man and was able to see things clearly. If he agreed with Xie Tianichi, there would be no way for the Pardon Sky Clan to redeem themselves from the other three clans. On the other hand, if he did not agree with Xie Tianichi, the consequences would be even more severe. If the Patriarch and the First Elder had a disagreement, and it was related to the future of the clan, it would undoubtedly cause the Pardon Sky Clan to fall apart or even trigger an internal war. The other three clans would be happy to see an internal war in the Pardon Sky Clan. Jiutian Wangchuan and Xie Tianichi had worked together for many years, thus he knew the latter's character very well. Once he had made up his mind, he would never turn back. Therefore, there was only one choice in front of pardoning Tian Wangchuan at this moment: agree to pardoning Tianichi and protect Nye Tian with his life. "Elder Xie Tian, you better think it through before you give us your answer," Wu Luoxin looked at Jiutian Wangchuan and said in a deep voice. "I've thought it through. Lord Patriarch's words are my answer." Pardoning Heaven Wangchuan's eyes darkened slightly. In an instant, he became much more resolute as he spoke in a heavy tone. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Luoxin, Guiji Longxiang, and the Imperial Martial God Sun were startled, as if they were about to lose control of themselves like three wild beasts. "Pardon Sky Clan, the Shaman Luo tribe accepts your answer. However, you better be prepared to face the wrath of the Shaman Luo tribe," Wu Luoxin roared after a long silence. Chapter 40:14. Guiji, Wu Luo, and the Imperial Martial Clan all reacted strongly and declared war on the Parting Sky Clan. Xie Tianichi stood in the middle of the hall and glanced at the three elders. He said in a deep voice, "The Parting Sky Clan is not afraid of any challenge." "Very well." Guiji and Xiang Dragon roared and turned around to leave. Since the negotiation had failed, there was no point in staying here any longer. "Young man, I don't know what you did to make the Parting Sky Clan protect you so much." Wu Luoxin glanced at Xie Tianichi and glanced at Nye Tian. He said in a cold voice, "But let me tell you, you have started a civil war between the four ancient holy clans. You will die a horrible death." Nye Tian frowned and did not speak. He did not expect things to turn out this way. "Let's go." Then, the Imperial Martial God Yang said in a cold voice. The three clans then walked out of the hall. "Wait." Suddenly, a cold and deep voice was heard, carrying with it a strong and oppressive aura. The three elders paused and were stunned. "Clan leader Xie Tian, are you going to kill us here?" Wu Luoxin turned around to look at Xie Tianichi and asked coldly. "Clan leader Xie Tian, you sure are cunning. Could it be that the Parting Sky Clan sent us here was a trap?" Guiji and Xiang Dragon snickered coldly. "Elders, don't worry. I am not that cunning. Xie Tian Ichi snickered and said, I just want to show you something. What do you want to see? The imperial martial god Yang was the most impulsive among the three. He growled, If you want to fight, I, the imperial martial god Yang, will fight you to the end. Xie Tian Ichi glanced at the imperial martial god Yang, and did not say anything. Instead, he turned to Jiutian Wanchuan and said, Great Elder, go get ninth brother. All right. Jiutian Wanchuan's eyes flickered as if he had thought of something. He agreed and dashed out of the hall. Elder Yuwu, let's not be impatient. Let's wait and see what he can take out. Wu Luoxin's face was dark and cold. All right. Martial Divine Sun nodded and said, If what I see is useless, then don't blame me for getting angry. Don't worry, you will definitely be interested. Xie Tian Ichi laughed and said faintly. A few moments later, Jiutian Wangchuan arrived with ninth elder Jie Tianjin. It's him. Could it be? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw Xie Tianjin. He seemed to have thought of something and his brows knitted even tighter. Lord Patriarch. Xie Tianjin came to the hall and glanced at Nie Tian before coming to Xie Tianayaki's side and being respectful. Ninth elder, do you still have the thing you showed me and the great elder a few days ago? Xie Tianayaki nodded and asked. Yes, Xie Tianjin answered and took out a scroll. He then passed it to Xie Tianayaki. Open it and let the three elders have a look. Xie Tianayaki nodded and said. Yes. Xie Tianjin glanced at Wu Luoxin and the other two elders. Then, he opened the scroll. Countless rays of light flew out and formed an image in the air. I knew it! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he realized what was going on. The image showed the moment when he entered the Yin Moon Forest. What's there to see? Martial Divine Sun sneered and his expression was cold. If Xie Tianayaki only wanted them to watch Nie Tian train in the Yin Moon Forest, he would forget about it. Elder Imperial Marshal, don't be anxious. Xie Tian Ichi smiled faintly with an indifferent expression. Then, the image showed Nie Tian and Doomsday falling into the Yin Blade 9 Murders formation. This is the Yin Blade 9 Murders formation. Wu Luoxin's eyes trembled and he was extremely shocked. The Yin Moon Forest was the training ground for the young martial artists of the Xie Tian clan. Sometimes, young martial artists from the other three clans would enter the forest too. Wu Luoxin was knowledgeable and he knew about the Yin Blade 9 Murders formation. At this moment, he couldn't help but glance at Nie Tian, wondering how the latter had managed to walk out of the killing formation. However, what happened next shocked him even more. Outyen Chigu appeared. Nie Tian and Mori Shire escaped from the Yin Blade 9 Murders formation and fought against Outyen Chigu together. Then, a series of events happened one after another. Wu Luoxin and the other two elders were bored at first. However, the more they watched, the more excited they became. Especially after Wu Luofeng appeared, the image of Nie Tian and the others fighting in Wu Luo's dark world was too terrifying. Wu Luoxin and the other two elders were the great elders of the ancient sacred tribe, and their strength was at the peak of the sky martial divine ancestor level. To them, the battle between Nie Tian and the others was not worth mentioning at all. However, it made their blood boil. They could not imagine how a level 2 heavenly righteousness great lord could fight against an expert like Wu Luofeng. Wu Luoxin was the great elder of the Wu Luo clan. He knew how powerful Wu Luofeng was. Nie Tian actually relied on his own strength to almost break Wu Luofeng's blood overarching dark world. This was too terrifying. Based on this, no one in the four ancient sacred clans could be compared to Nie Tian in terms of talent. At that moment, Wu Luoxin finally understood why Xie Tian Ichi would protect Nie Tian to the death. Nie Tian's talent was too terrifying. Soon, the three elders finished watching everything that had happened in the Shadow Moon Forest. They were all shocked. They had to admit that Nie Tian was indeed terrifying. Such a martial artist would definitely be at the peak of the peak when he grew up. It was no exaggeration to say that if Nye Tian reached level 9 of the Sky Martial Realm, he would definitely crush all the martial artists in the all-heaven sacred world. High Chieftain Xie Tian, you're only showing us these things because you want to tell us that this Nye Tian kid is very talented. After a while, Guiji and Xiang Dragon spoke. They were much calmer now and said, but no matter how talented he is not qualified to be the great priest of the 4 clans. Elder Guiji is right. No matter how terrifying this kid is, he is still an outsider and has yet to grow up. How can he be the great priest? The Imperial Divine Son sneered. He does have the potential of a hidden dragon. Wu Luoxin glanced at Nye Tian in shock and fear. He said, but now, he has yet to reach the sky. Because he is a hidden dragon, he must die. Wu Luoxin could no longer suppress his murderous intent and released it. The entire hall was filled with a terrifying murderous intent. Nye Tian was too powerful. He could not be allowed to continue growing. Therefore, he had to be killed. Looking at the 3 of them, Xie Tian Ichi didn't seem too surprised. Instead, he asked with a faint smile, do you know who was the first person to acknowledge Nye Tian as the High Priestess? Who? The 3 of them were shocked and asked at the same time. The ancestor of our clan, Ancestor Shui Luo, Xie Tian Ichi said in a deep voice as a strange light flickered in his eyes. Ancestor Shui Luo. The 3 of them exclaimed in shock. They never expected Ancestor Shui Luo to appear. Chapter 40:15. The Prophecy Child. The 4 words were like 4 claps of thunder that resounded in the ears of Guiji, Wu Luo, and Wu Luo. They were dumbfounded and could not speak for a long time. The Prophecy Child? Nye Tian frowned when he saw the abnormal reactions of Wu Luoxin and the others. He mumbled to himself, wondering what the 4 words meant. He can't be the Prophecy Child. Wu Luoxin finally regained his senses after half a day. He stared at Nye Tian in shock and his voice was trembling. The Prophecy Child, how could he be an outsider? Guiji and Xiang Dragon were equally shocked. They stared at Nye Tian and were clearly panicking. Outsider, how could he be an outsider? The Imperial Battle God's son screamed in shock, as if he had gone mad. What is the Prophecy Child? Nye Tian frowned when he saw their reactions. He was even more confused. It seemed like the Prophecy Child was someone important to the 4 ancient sacred clans. Could Nye Tian be the Prophecy Child that Xie Tian Ichi had mentioned? Elders, when the prophecy appeared in the ancient firmament world, it did not state that the child of the prophecy could not be an outsider. Xie Tian Ichi's eyes sank slightly as a strange light flickered in his eyes. This. The Imperial Battle God's son's eyes trembled as he stared at Nye Tian. He was speechless. Clan leader Xie Tian, you said that the first person to admit Nye Tian's identity was Ancestor Shui Luo. What's going on? Wu Luoxin was calmer as he asked Xie Tianichi. Xie Tianichi's gaze shifted as he glanced at Xie Tian Wangchuan. The latter understood and recounted everything that had happened earlier. He discovered the heart of rheumatism and awakened the remnant of Ancestor Shui Luo's soul. Wu Luoxin was astonished. He had not expected Nye Tian to have done so much for the Pardon Sky Clan. No wonder the Pardon Sky Clan was so protective of Nye Tian. As a member of the 4 ancient sacred clans, Wu Luoxin understood the importance of sacred color rheumatism to the Pardoning Sky Clan. Could this kid really be the Prophecy Child? The Imperial Martial Divine Son exclaimed in shock as he looked at Nye Tian with unconcealable fear and dread. Elder Yuwu, everything is just a guess, don't scare yourself. Guiji and Xiang Long's faces darkened and they spoke in a cold tone. However, the look in his eyes was clearly not very confident. He was clearly worried about something. Whether he is the prophesied child or not, we will know once we bring him to the ancient sky dome. At that moment, Wu Luoxin's eyes flickered with a strange light as he said in a deep voice. This. The Martial Divine Son was taken aback. I'm afraid that's not a good idea. Guiji and Xiang Long furrowed their brows and said, "The ancient firmament is the birthplace of our 4 ancient saint clans. It is also the most sacred land of our 4 clans. Since the ancient times, only the noblest of our 4 clans are allowed to enter. It is indeed inappropriate for an outsider to enter the ancient firmament. The ancient firmament was the birthplace of the 4 ancient saint clans. It was the most sacred land of the 4 clans. Even the martial artists of the 4 clans could only enter the ancient firmament, let alone outsiders. Now that Wu Luoxin wanted to bring Nie Tian into the ancient firmament, the others naturally disagreed. What should we do then? Wu Luoxin frowned and asked in a deep voice. The Imperial Martial Divine Son's face stiffened and he was stunned speechless. He really did not know what to do. Although he was unwilling to admit it, he had already guessed that Nie Tian could be the legendary prophecy child. If Nie Tian was really the prophecy child, then killing him would undoubtedly bring disaster to the 4 ancient saint clans. If they did not kill Nie Tian, they would have to acknowledge his identity as the Great Priest, which was not acceptable either. If Nie Tian was the prophecy child, then he was naturally worthy of the title of the Great Priest of the 4 clans. However, what if he was not? The situation seemed to be in a dilemma. Could it be that we have no choice but to bring him to the ancient firmament? The Guiji Xiang dragon's face was gloomy. After a long silence, he spoke in a deep voice. In my opinion, we should bring him to the ancient firmament now. If he is not the prophecy child, then the ancient firmament will be the last thing he sees. Wu Luoxin's face was gloomy and he spoke in a cold voice. The Imperial Martial Divine Son and the Guiji Xiang Dragon's expressions changed when they heard Wu Luoxin's words. Wu Luoxin had made it very clear that if they arrived at the ancient firmament and proved that Nie Tian was not the prophecy child, then they would kill him. Elder Wu Luoxin, what if Nie Tian is the prophecy child? At that moment, Xie Tianichi's lips twitched and he asked with a smile. Wu Luoxin frowned and did not speak. If he can prove that he is the prophecy child, the Imperial Martial Clan will acknowledge his identity as the Great Priest. The Imperial Martial Divine Son's eyes trembled and he said directly, "If the prophecy child becomes the Great Priest of the 4 clans, the Guiji clan will naturally not object." The Guiji Xiang Dragon thought for a while and said in a deep voice. Wu Luoxin suddenly lifted his head and glanced at the Imperial Martial Divine Son and the Guiji Xiang Dragon. After hesitating for a long time, he finally nodded his head and said, "As you wish, elders." Xie Tianichi nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Let's not waste any more time. Let's bring Nie Tian to the ancient firmament now." "All right." The 3 elders looked at each other and nodded their heads. The higher-ups of the 4 ancient sacred clans had decided to bring Nie Tian to the ancient firmament. Wait a minute. However, at that moment Wu Luofeng, who was behind Wu Luoxin, stood out and said, "Elders, isn't it too reckless to bring a foreign martial artist to the ancient firmament?" Xie Tianichi glanced at Wu Luofeng and frowned. He did not speak but looked at Wu Luoxin. What he meant was obvious. Wu Luofeng had no right to speak. "Wu Luofeng, what are you trying to say?" Wu Luoxin did not stop Wu Luofeng but asked cold. "Elders, if you think he is the prophesied child, why don't you let us test his abilities first?" Wu Luofeng laughed and said, "If he cannot even defeat us, how can he be the prophesied child? What do you think?" Wu Luoxin's eyes dimmed and he agreed with Wu Luofeng's suggestion. "That works too." The Guiji Xiang Dragon creased his eyebrows and nodded his head. The Imperial Martial Divine Son's face darkened and he did not speak. "Wu Luofeng, you really don't know shame." At that moment, Jiutian Wangchuan spoke and said, "What are your abilities and what is Nie Tian's? With your cultivation states, isn't it too much to ask Nie Tian to fight against you?" Nie Tian did not speak at the side. Jiutian Wangchuan spoke his mind. Chapter 40:16. Grand Elder Xie Tian, calm down. Wu Luofeng looked at Jiutian Wangchuan and smiled. He said, "Since Nie Tian might be the prophecy child, why would we bully him? Young man, if you really want to fight, suppress your cultivation level to the same level as Nie Tian." Jiutian Wangchuan sneered and said, "If that's the case, I have no objections." Jiutian Wangchuan knew how powerful Nie Tian was. If Wu Luofeng and the rest suppressed their cultivation level, they would not be Nie Tian's opponent. One had to know that Nie Tian had almost broken Wu Luo's blood overarching dark world. Such battle strength was extremely terrifying. "Grand Elder Xie Tian, your request is too much," Wu Luofeng frowned and said coldly. He had just seen Nie Tian's performance in the Yin Moon Forest, and he knew how terrifying Nie Tian was. He even felt that if Wu Luofeng fought against Nie Tian alone, the outcome would be uncertain. If Wu Luofeng suppressed his cultivation level, he would definitely be killed by Nie Tian in one hit. "Grand Elder Xie Tian, don't worry. We will not bully Nie Tian. Let's compete with his bloodline." Wu Luofeng smiled faintly and looked at pardoning Heaven Wangchuan playfully. "Compete with bloodline?" Jiutian Wangchuan creased his eyebrows and his expression changed. "Yes." Wu Luofeng nodded. He extended his palm and 4 white jade stones appeared. "Holy light blood stones!" Jiutian Wangchuan was shocked. He immediately understood that Wu Luofeng wanted to use the holy light bloodstones to compete with Nie Tian's bloodline power. Nie Tian's expression changed when he saw the 4 pieces of white jade. He could sense that the white jade was extremely sensitive to the power of the bloodline. Moreover, the jade contained a mysterious power that was very mysterious. "Great Elder Xie Tian, we are using the sacred light bloodstone to compete in terms of bloodline. This isn't considered bullying Nie Tian, right?" Wu Luofeng smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows. "Sure." Jiutian Wangchuan agreed. "Nie Tian, this is your first time coming into contact with the holy light bloodstone. Let me show you how to use it." Then Wu Luofeng looked at Nie Tian and smiled faintly. Then, with a flick of his palm, a surge of blood force appeared and quickly flowed into a holy light bloodstone. Swoosh! In the next instant, the sacred light bloodstone was activated and released a violent energy that soared into the sky. So powerful! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he was shocked. Turned out that this was how the sacred light bloodstone was used. A martial artist's blood force could activate the energy within the bloodstone and release a powerful attack. "Brother Giji, Brother Yuwu." Then Wu Luofeng looked at the 2 martial artists and the latter 2 stepped forward. Then Wu Luofeng smiled faintly and threw a sacred light blood stone to Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, the 3 of us will compete with you once each. If you can defeat us, you pass," he said. Nie Tian caught the sacred light blood stone and felt the energy within it. His eyes quivered uncontrollably. Then, his lips curled into a smile and he said, "How about this? We don't have to go through so much trouble. The 3 of you can fight me together." Wu Luofeng's eyes darkened and his face instantly darkened. Nie Tian was obviously looking down on them. The 2 young martial artists from the Giji clan and the Imperial Martial clan looked gloomy too. Nie Tian wanted to fight against the 3 of them at the same time. This was a blatant humiliation. "Nie Tian, don't force yourself," Jiutian Wangchuan reacted and said. The blood force of the 4 ancient sacred clans had a certain degree of similarity. If they worked well together, they could trigger a resonance. Although it wasn't as powerful as the resonance of the same blood force, it was still terrifying. Nie Tian fighting against Wu Luofeng and the other 2 martial artists at the same time was a completely different fight. Nie Tian was too arrogant to be so arrogant. "Young people are arrogant. Elder Shurtian, why stop us?" Wu Luofeng smirked coldly and his face darkened. Nie Tian was arrogant now. So be it. Wu Luofeng and the other martial artists' reputation was not important. Losing the fight was more important. As long as Wu Luofeng and the other martial artists could win, it didn't matter how they won. Since Nie Tian is confident, Elder Shi Tian should believe in him, Giji Longxiang smirked and said. The imperial martial god Yang didn't say anything. He obviously hoped that Nie Tian could fight against Wu Luofeng and the other two martial artists at the same time. Nie Tian, are you really confident? Jiutian Wangchuan frowned and asked. Grand Elder, believe in me. Nie Tian smiled and his body released a domineering confidence. Jiutian Wangchuan nodded and chose to believe in Nie Tian. Let's begin. Nie Tian smiled faintly, a cold smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Since these people were suspicious of him, he would give them a big shock. Nie Tian, you are asking for it. Don't blame me. Wu Luofeng smirked and stepped forward. The blood force in his body surged, and he was like a wild beast. Nie Tian's face was calm. However, his eyes were so deep that it was frightening. Attack! Wu Luofeng didn't waste any more time. He shouted and the blood force in his body surged into the holy light bloodstone. Then, a violent force appeared and pressed towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes froze and the divine demon power in his body surged. Suddenly, the holy light blood stone in his hand trembled, and a terrifying force appeared. Bang! In the next instant the two forces collided in the void. After a muffled sound, Wu Luofeng was forced to retreat continuously while Nie Tian stood in his original position like an old tree with its roots entrenched. He did not move at all. Wu Luofeng steadied his body. Although he wasn't injured, his face was red and he looked terrible. He didn't expect Nie Tian's blood force to be so strong. Let me. At this moment, Gui Jisheng from the Giji clan made his move. The holy light blood stone released a dark force that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's lips twitched. The sword chi in his body surged and the holy light blood stone in his hand released a beam of sword light in the sky that broke through the dark force. Gui Jisheng's silhouette trembled and he retreated several steps. The blood force in Nie Tian's blood force now wasn't limited to the divine demon power. The heart of the sky had also become part of his blood force. Little brat, have a taste of the blood force of my martial royal clan. Following which, Yu Wuming from the martial royal clan made his move. In the air, a huge force appeared like a mountain and blasted towards Nie Tian. Good timing. Nie Tian smiled faintly. After which, the dragon veins in his body started to revolve. The holy light blood stone let out a low roar of a dragon. After which, the silhouette of a dragon appeared and soared into the sky. After a muffled boom, Yu Wuming's silhouette was flung tens of meters away. The crowd was stunned by the scene in front of them. Their expressions trembled as they drew in a breath of cold air. They were speechless. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Nie Tian would be able to defeat Wu Luofeng and the other two so casually. What was even more terrifying was that Nie Tian had used 3 different types of blood force to defeat the 3 of them. Exactly how much potential was contained in Nie Tian's body? That's right, Nie Tian had used the Fiend God Origin Embryo, the Heart of the Sky, and the Sovereign Dragon Veins respectively. These 3 types of blood force were all part of his blood force. Xie Tianichi and Jiutian Wangchuan were dumbfounded as they watched from the side. They didn't dare to believe that Nie Tian was actually so terrifying. Join forces. At this moment, Wu Luofeng roared in a low voice. After which, the silhouettes of Yu Wuming and Gui Jisheng flickered. The 3 of them stood together and prepared to activate their blood force at the same time. Chapter 40:17. Nie Tianling looked at Wu Luofeng and the other 2. Even if he were to face 3 ancient sacred bloodlines at the same time, he was not the least bit afraid. Could it be that he has an even more terrifying bloodline power? Xie Tianichi felt the confidence in Nie Tian's eyes and his heart could not help but sink. He was extremely shocked. Clan leader, if Nie Tian wants to fight against Wu Luofeng and the other 2, He has to combine the 3 bloodline powers that he has displayed previously. Do you think he can do it? Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes were trembling. It was obvious that he was very nervous and his heart was in his throat. He thought that Nie Tian could combine the 3 bloodline powers that he had displayed earlier. Nie Tian's body had 3 bloodline powers that were not weaker than the ancient sacred bloodline. This was already very shocking. If he could combine the 3 bloodline powers, it would be even more frightening. His control over his own bloodline was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Under normal circumstances, there would only be 1 bloodline power in a martial artist's body. This was because different bloodline powers would suppress and clash with each other. For example, if the water bloodline power and the fire bloodline power existed in the same martial artist's body, the martial artist would not be able to withstand them. Even if it were 2 bloodline powers of the same attribute, there would be strong repulsion. It was not something that an ordinary person could withstand. Jiutian Wangchuan was very confused. How could Nie Tian's body have 3 such strong bloodline powers at the same time? How could he withstand the clash of the 3 bloodlines? That's right. Nie Tian's martial body was far stronger than martial artists of the same level. However, the 3 bloodline powers that he had displayed were stronger than the ancient sacred bloodline. This clash of bloodlines was definitely not something that a strong martial body could withstand. There must be an even stronger power in Nie Tian's body that suppressed the clash of the 3 bloodlines. Thinking of this, Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes could not help but tremble. The way he looked at Nie Tian changed. Other than shock, there was a clear tinge of fear. He could not imagine that a martial artist could actually be powerful to this extent. Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes were burning. He really wanted to know what kind of power Nie Tian had in his body. As for Wu Luoxin and the rest, their eyes were trembling. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so powerful. To be able to defeat the geniuses of 3 ancient saint clans with just 3 different bloodlines, that was just too terrifying. Wu Luo's dark power. 8 desolate ghost taboo. Omnidirectional imperial martial. At this moment, Wu Luofeng, Gui Jixing and Yu Wuming spoke at the same time. Momentarily, the power of their bloodline erupted forth, gushing into the sacred Emperor Bloodstone. Boom! In the next moment, the 3 holy light bloodstones rose into the air and vibrated at the same time. 3 violent forces rushed out and fused together in the air, turning into a raging storm that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he felt the violent energy rushing towards him from the void. However, he did not panic. Instead, he released the astral energy within his body, causing his entire body to glow with starlight. Boom! In the next moment, within the holy light bloodstones, a gigantic beam of starlight appeared. Instantly, the surrounding space became resplendent and the entire heavens and earth seemed to be illuminated by the light. Bang! Immediately after, the 2 terrifying forces collided against each other, causing the void to tremble. In the midst of a muffled sound, a wave of energy that could be seen with the naked eye appeared and spread out in all directions. Nie Tian felt the terrifying force of the impact and his body trembled. He took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. On the other side, Wu Luofeng and the other 2 were sent flying. When they stabilized their bodies, they spat out a mouthful of blood in unison. Each of their faces was paler and uglier than the last. The 3 of them stared at Nie Tian, their eyes trembling. Other than shock, they were obviously filled with fear and terror. The combined attack of the 3 of them was actually defeated by Nie Tian. The spectators were stunned by the scene in front of them. Their faces were blank and they couldn't react for a long time. They couldn't imagine that Nie Tian could defeat Wu Luofeng and the other 2 so easily. Especially the blood force that Nie Tian had used at the end, it was too terrifying. At that moment, Jiutian Wangchuan finally knew what the even more terrifying force within Nie Tian's body was. It was an even more terrifying blood force. What shocked Jiutian Wanchuan was that although the blood force that Nie Tian had used at the end was extremely powerful, it was very gentle, and it didn't seem to have any pressure on the martial body. On the contrary, the reason why Nie Tian's multiple blood forces could coexist was because of the existence of this last blood force. Such a strange bloodline power was simply too terrifying. The blood force of the ancient holy tribe is just so. At that moment, Nie Tian took a step forward. The corners of his lips curled into a faint smile as he spoke in a sarcastic tone. Son of AB***, you are courting death. Wu Luofeng's eyes trembled. His eyes were bloodshot and they were filled with killing intent. He suddenly roared and released the aura from his body. Like a wild beast, he charged towards Nie Tian. Since he couldn't compete with blood force, Wu Luofeng attacked directly. How dare you! However, at that moment a deep voice rang out. Then, a huge force appeared and locked Wu Luofeng in place. Ha ha ha! Wu Luofeng's body froze in midair, and he couldn't move at all. Son of AB***, who gave you the courage to behave atrociously in the Blood Net Mansion? Jiutian Wanchuan's face was dark and there seemed to be flames in his eyes. He glanced at Wu Luofeng. If it wasn't for the latter, he would have killed Wu Luofeng. Wu Luofeng, apologize to Nie Tian now. Wu Luofeng's face was dark and he seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, a strange light flashed across his eyes and he shouted loudly. At that moment, he even changed the way he addressed Nie Tian. Wu Luofeng's eyes trembled and his face was as ugly as it could be. He thought for a while and finally lowered his head. He looked at Nie Tian and said, I'm sorry, I was rash. It's okay. Nie Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Don't do it again. Jiutian Wanchuan roared coldly. Then, he let go of Wu Luofeng. After Wu Luofeng landed on the ground, he glared at Nie Tian. It was obvious that he was still angry. However, he didn't dare to act rashly and he could only retreat to the side obediently. Gui Jixing and Yu Wuming were panicking and they didn't even have the courage to look at Nie Tian. They didn't expect the foreign clan ant that they usually talked about to be so strong. 3 elders, can we enter the firmament ancient now? Jiutian Wanchuan smiled faintly. He glanced at Wu Luofeng and the other 2 elders and his gaze was filled with provocation. Chapter 40:18 Nie Tian fought against Wu Luofeng and the other 2 with his star bloodline and won the battle. He was qualified to enter Firmament Ancient. At that moment, Nie Tian arrived at the outskirts of 4 Sacred Mountain under the lead of Xie Tian Ichi and the others. The mountain range before him stretched endlessly as far as the eye could see. The trees were lush and verdant, giving off a sense of vitality. This was 4 Sacred Mountain, the origin of the 4 ancient sacred clans. It was regarded as a sacred mountain by the 4 ancient sacred clans. Normally, the entire 4 Sacred Mountain was guarded by experts. Only those with a high status in the 4 ancient sacred clans could enter. However, today, 4 Sacred Mountain would welcome a foreign martial artist. Clan leader, let's enter. Jiutian Wanchuan took a deep breath and prepared to enter 4 Sacred Mountain. Xie Tian Ichi nodded and was the first to enter the mountain range. Nie Tian followed closely behind. The moment he entered the mountain range, he felt his entire body being surrounded by a mysterious power. It made him feel indescribably comfortable. It seems to be some kind of natural barrier. He curled his lips and thought to himself. He was right. The entire 4 Sacred Mountain was covered by a strong natural barrier. Moreover, the barrier did not suppress the martial artists at all. On the contrary, it could accelerate the circulation of the martial artists' yuan meridians and greatly increase the martial artists' cultivation speed. It was even beneficial to the martial artists' bloodline power. The martial artists of the 4 ancient sacred clans are cultivating in such an environment. No wonder they are so powerful. Nie Tian thought as he felt the ripple of power in the void. Although it seemed like he had won the battle with the bloodline power easily, it had not been easy at all. Especially when Wu Luofeng and the other two had teamed up, he had almost lost. After all, the bloodline power of the three ancient sacred clans was extremely powerful. If Wu Luofeng and the other two had better teamwork, Nie Tian would have been the one who had lost. Under the lead of Xie Tianichi and the others, Nie Tian arrived at the core of Four Sacred Mountain very quickly. However, along the way they had passed through countless killing formations. Furthermore, Nie Tian felt that there were many experts hiding in the surrounding space. Four Sacred Mountain was the origin of the four ancient sacred clans. It was heavily guarded. If not for Xie Tianichi and the others, ordinary people would not have been able to enter. Even Fat Cat had said that the surrounding killing formations were extremely powerful. In next to no time, they arrived outside a gorge, and then Xie Tianichi and the others flashed their command tokens to display their identities. However, they did not enter the valley directly. Instead, they waited outside quietly. "Outsider, you are not allowed to enter Firmament Ancient." A moment later, a powerful voice came from the valley. It was like a thunderclap, causing everyone's ears to ring. Replying to the guard, this youth might be the legendary prophesied child. Our four races decided to bring him to the ancient sky dome for the test, Xie Tianichi said loudly as he stepped forward. There was no immediate reply from the valley. After a long while, there was finally an answer. "Since this is a joint decision of the four races, please enter." Boom. Just as he finished speaking, a slight tremor came from the entrance of the valley. A barrier. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He realized that there was a barrier outside the valley. He did not feel it at all. What a terrifying barrier! At this time, the little fat cat couldn't help but exclaim, "This barrier is extremely well hidden, even this sovereign didn't discover it. Is this ward strong?" Nie Tian couldn't help but ask with a frown. "Yes." Fat Cat nodded and said, "Even a peak sky martial divine ancestor would be killed by the barrier without knowing it." This. Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, not knowing what to say. The security of Firmament Ancient was much tighter than he had imagined. He could not help but look forward to what Firmament Ancient looked like. Then, Nie Tian and the others entered the valley. The entire valley was long and narrow. It was dark and gloomy. Xie Tianichi led them to the end of the valley. What appeared in front of them was not the entrance, but a huge mountain wall. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown, a puzzled look on his face. "Nie Tian, follow me closely." Right at this moment, Xie Tianichi spoke in a deep voice, and then his figure flashed into the sky. Nie Tian came to his senses and immediately followed. Jiutian Wangchuan and the other three elders also followed. Nie Tian and the others continued to fly up into the sky. After a while, when Nie Tian felt that they had reached a height of a few 100,000 meters, he suddenly felt a mysterious force appear. It was like an invisible giant hand was pulling him up. His speed instantly increased by a lot. This. Nie Tian couldn't help but panic at the sudden turn of events, causing him to cry out in alarm. "Don't panic, we'll be there soon." Xie Tianichi glanced at Nie Tian and said with a smile. Nie Tian nodded and calmed down. After a short while, Nie Tian sensed that the invisible force began to weaken and soon disappeared. At this time, a world of clouds appeared in front of him. In the sea of clouds, a stairway could be vaguely seen. Nie Tian took a look. The stairway was not long, around 100 steps. Nie Tian, the cloud stairway you see is called the Firmament Path. Go and reach the end of the Firmament Path, Xie Tianichi said to Nie Tian as the group stabilized themselves. Without the slightest hesitation, Nie Tian flashed into action and arrived at the bottom of the Heaven Path. Following this, he took a step forward and landed on the first step of the Firmament Path. At that moment, he felt the Firmament Path emitting a powerful force that made him feel extremely tired. Nie Tian didn't panic. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "It seems that I'll have to walk step by step." He felt that this firmament path was a test of his talent and endurance. He had experienced this test many times, so it was not difficult for him. Xie Tian-ichi and the others stared at Nie Tian passionately, as if they were anticipating something. Nie Tian walked on the firmament path. Initially, his speed was fast, but the further he went, the slower his speed became. However, his figure did not stop. In the end, he finally stood at the end of the firmament path with difficulty. He stepped onto the firmament path. Jiutian Wangchuan's eyes flickered as he exclaimed in surprise. He did not expect Nie Tian to step onto the firmament path so easily. "Everyone, let's begin." At that moment, Xie Tianichi smiled and said to the others, Wu Luoxin and the others nodded solemnly. Their expressions turned serious as they formed a seal with both hands. Waves of magical energy were released and formed runes in the air. Chapter 40-19. High up in the sky of the firmament ancient, there was a loud rumble. A huge stone tablet appeared amidst the lingering clouds, standing at the top of the firmament like a primordial giant standing in the clouds. Heaven and earth were immediately shrouded by a vast aura. It was mysterious, solemn, ancient, and vicissitude. Under the influence of this aura, the expressions of Xie Tian-ichi and the others turned solemn. Pairs of eyes stared at the firmament tablet with incomparable reverence. The appearance of the firmament tablet meant that the firmament ancient had begun to acknowledge Nie Tian. Next, it would depend on the reaction of the firmament tablet to see if Nie Tian was the legendary prophecy's child. Nie Tian stood proudly at the end of the firmament ancient. As soon as the heavens monument appeared, he felt a boundless pressure, as if it was pressing down on him from all directions. He could not avoid it and could only endure it. At that moment, his soul trembled inexplicably, as if it had resonated with some mysterious power. In the next instant, he discovered that his divine sense had arrived in a strange space-time. There was nothing around him. He just stood in the void, feeling the boundlessness of time and space. Although he knew that he had just arrived in this space-time, he had a strange feeling in his heart, as if he had been standing there for a very, very long time. How could this be? It's you? Just then, a deep voice rang out from the endless void. It sounded illusory, yet it seemed to be coming from all directions at the same time. When Nie Tian heard the voice, he immediately felt a roar in his head, as if his divine soul had been struck by some terrifying power. However, it did not cause him any harm, as if it was warning him. How could it be me? Nie Tian went blank for a moment, feeling confused and shocked. Judging from the voice, it seemed that it knew him. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. The illusory voice rang out again, causing the entire space to rumble. Nie Tian immediately felt his divine soul tremble violently. What is this place? Nie Tian suppressed the shock in his heart, calmed himself, and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" No, this isn't right at all. However, the voice did not pay any attention to him. Instead, it continued speaking as if it was similarly shocked by something and felt that it was inconceivable. What's impossible? What's wrong? Nie Tian was puzzled. He had no idea what the voice was saying. He wanted to leave this place, but he discovered to his astonishment that his divine soul was shackled by a force, and he was utterly unable to leave. "Kid, what's your name?" After a short moment, the voice resounded once more, but this time, it was much calmer, and it asked in a deep voice, "Nie Tian." Nie Tian raised his head and responded in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. He really wanted to know what was going on in front of him. Nie Tian. The voice rang out once again with a hint of shock in it. It seemed to be talking to itself as it said, "How could the first person to enter the celestial monument be you? Someone like you." Nie Tian frowned. He was confused. What was wrong with a person like him? He didn't say much and waited for the voice to continue. "Nye Tian kid, I'd like to see what kind of power you have in your body." At that instant the voice spoke in a deep voice. Following this, Nye Tian felt his divine soul tremble for no reason, as if an invisible giant hand was roaming around in his body. At this moment, he had a strange feeling. It was as if he was standing there naked and being scrutinized. He did not like this feeling, as it made him feel humiliated. After a short moment, the invisible giant hand disappeared, and the entire world fell into a dead silence. The voice also disappeared, as if it had never existed in the first place. Nye Tian stood on the spot and waited quietly. His divine soul seemed to be shackled here, and he couldn't get out at all. So it's like this. How could this be? Could this be heaven's will? After a long time, the voice rang out once again. It seemed to be extremely shocked, but at the same time it seemed to have understood something. "Senior, I'd like to know what's going on." Nye Tian frowned and asked. He couldn't take it anymore. Everything before him made him feel an inexplicable sense of panic. "I didn't expect the first person to enter the Heaven's Monument isn't the prophecy child." Following this, the voice spoke, completely ignoring Nye Tian's question. Nye Tian frowned when he heard the man's words. It turned out that he wasn't the prophecy child that Xie Tian Ichi and the others had mentioned. It seemed like the prophecy child was someone else. But it doesn't matter. Since you've come to the Heaven's Monument, it means that you must be related to the 4 ancient sacred tribes in some way. Following this, the voice spoke again. "Nye Tian, can you tell me now, what do you need?" "What do I need?" Nye Tian was startled, as he did not expect the person to ask this. "Nye Tian, you're an outsider with only the strength of the Tiani saint, yet you're able to come to the Heaven's Monument. You didn't force your way in, did you?" The voice sounded like it was joking. Yeah. Nye Tian nodded. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the point and explained the situation he was facing. "I see. They thought you were the prophecy child. No wonder they brought you here." The voice came to a realization and said with a laugh, "Forget it. Since you've entered the Heaven's Monument, it means you're related to the 4 ancient sacred tribes. Let me ask you, do you want to be the great priest of the 4 ancient sacred tribes? Do I have a choice?" Nye Tian let out a wry smile and wore a helpless expression. The problem now was not whether he wanted to be the great priest, but he had to be the great priest. If he couldn't be the high priest, he would be killed by the 4 ancient holy clans. In order to survive, he had to become the great priest. "It seems like the 4 ancient sacred tribes have set you up here." The voice laughed heartily and said, "I can make you the great priest, but you have to promise me one thing." "What is it?" Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked nervously. "Find the real prophecy child for me," the voice suddenly said in a serious tone. "This?" Nye Tian frowned. He couldn't help but stare blankly, and a troubled expression appeared on his face. The world was vast and boundless. The sea of people rose and fell. How could he possibly find someone he didn't understand at all? He was not a person who would make promises easily. He had to be even more cautious when it came to things that he could not do. "Don't worry, I will tell you how to find the prophecy child, but you have to find the prophecy child within 3 years." The voice knew what Nye Tian was worried about and said in a deep voice. 3 years. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. This was more than enough time for him. "Senior, I agree to your conditions." Nye Tian agreed without hesitation after thinking for a while. Chapter 40-20. Nye Tian's divine soul returned to his body, but he stood rooted to the ground, unable to react. He raised his head and looked at the Heaven's Monument in the sky, but he could not sense any aura from it. He could not help but wonder if everything that had just happened in the Heaven's Monument was real, or if it was just his imagination. However, at that instant, he suddenly saw a change happening to the Heaven's Monument. Boom! The Heaven's tablet let out a roar. Immediately after, It was as if an invisible giant pen was carving out dazzling golden marks on the huge tablet. This! Xietian Ichi and the others were stunned by the scene before them. Their eyes trembled, not knowing how to express the astonishment in their hearts. A moment later, a loud roar could be heard from the heavens monument as 3 words were left on the giant monument: Great Priest! Great Priest! Xietian's eyes flickered as his entire body stiffened. It was obvious that the heavens monument meant that he could become the great priest of the 4 tribes. Great Priest! Xietian Ichi and the others were utterly shocked when they saw the 3 words. They exclaimed in surprise before they were left in a daze. It seems like everything that happened just now was real, mumbled Xietian as he collected his thoughts. He's really the prophecy child. At that instant, Jiutian Wangchuan let out a scream, as his eyes stared at Xietian in awe. The prophecy child, this kid is the prophecy child. Wu Luoxin and the others reacted at the same time, as they exclaimed in astonishment. The disbelief in their hearts was written all over their faces. The heavens monument had changed, acknowledging Xietian's identity as the great priest. Without a doubt, he was the legendary prophecy child. I'm not the prophecy child, I'm the one who's looking for the prophecy child. Xietian became cold as he glanced at Xietian Ichi and the others, before letting out a wry laugh in his heart. It was not a bad thing for him that Xietian Ichi and the others had mistaken him for the prophecy child, thus there was no need for him to explain himself. Xietian, don't forget our agreement. At that moment, the voice rang out in Xietian's mind once again. I've already left a prophecy seal on your palm. When you meet the child of the prophecy seal will naturally react. Prophecy Holy Seal. Xietian's gaze trembled slightly as he opened his palm. Sure enough, he saw a dense cluster of runes on his palm. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that the runes actually contained an extremely powerful force. Xietian, remember, you only have 3 years. You must find the child of the prophecy within 3 years. After that, the voice resounded, and it actually carried a threatening aura. 3 years. Xietian murmured as his lips curled into a faint smile. It shouldn't be difficult for him to find someone within 3 years. He could sense the threat in the voice, thus he was very curious as to what would happen if he failed to find the child of the prophecy child within 3 years. The prophecy seal can only exist for 3 years. You must return within 3 years, or else you will perish along with the prophecy seal, the voice said in a deep voice, each word shocking Xietian. This! Xietian's eyes flickered as he finally understood the meaning of the prophecy seal. It turned out that the prophecy seal was not only helping him find the child of the prophecy child, but it was also a sword hanging above his head. If he failed to find the child of the prophecy seal within 3 years, the sword hanging above his head would fall and take his life. One could not help but admit that the person inside the sky monument truly had some tricks up his sleeves. Xietian, before you find the child of the prophecy child, you will temporarily assume his identity. Following this, the voice spoke with a deep chuckle. Following this, the sky monument shuddered in the air and disappeared. Xietian frowned as he stared at the place where the sky monument had disappeared. His eyes were trembling, and he was unable to react for a long time. It seemed like he would have to spend the next 3 years in a hurry again. After a while, he calmed down and flew down from the sky path, arriving beside Xietian Ichi and the others. Xietian, ah no, Grand Priest. Jiutian Wangchuan looked at Xietian, his eyes burning with excitement. He asked in surprise, "How do you feel now?" "I feel great." Xietian smiled faintly and did not mention what had happened inside the sky monument. The voice had already asked him to temporarily assume the identity of the child of the prophecy child. Grand Priest. At this moment, the Imperial War Divine's son took a step forward and arrived before Xietian. His voice was slightly trembling, and it was obvious that he was also very excited. What happened just now? I don't know either. Nie Tian shook his head and said with a smile, My soul seemed to have entered the sky monument, and I heard a voice saying something. After that, I came out and saw the words Grand Priest on the sky monument. He had only described it briefly. Of course, it was impossible for him to explain everything in detail. Human ruler, firmament emperor. Xie Tianichi's eyes flickered when he heard Nie Tian's words, and he exclaimed in shock. The others were stunned and confused. Rumor has it that the sky monument was left behind by the human ruler, the firmament emperor. His soul is inside the sky monument. Xie Tianichi's eyes were trembling as he said, I think that the voice that appeared in the sky monument belonged to the human ruler, the firmament emperor. The others' eyes were trembling, and they were so shocked that they could not speak. Who would have thought that Nie Tian had just communicated with the human ruler? Human ruler? Nie Tian frowned, and his expression did not look good. He did not know if the voice belonged to the human ruler, but the fact that this person had used the prophecy seal to trick him made him rather unhappy. Clan leader, let's leave this place. Nie Tian glanced at the crowd and said with a smile. Since these people had acknowledged his identity as the Grand Priest, there was no point in staying any longer. All right, Xie Tianichi agreed and left with the crowd. Along the way Wu Luoxin and the rest looked at Nie Tian was obviously different. Apart from shock, there was also unconcealable respect. At that moment, they believed that Nie Tian was the one in the prophecy, and they had also acknowledged Nie Tian's identity as the Grand Priest. As Nie Tian was the Grand Priest of the four clans, it was no exaggeration to say that his current status was the highest among the four ancient sacred clans. He was even higher than the four clan leaders and the four great elders. Soon, Nie Tian and the rest returned to Xie Tian City and arrived outside the Blood Cloud Manor. At that moment, Nie Tian's expression changed all of a sudden, and he could not help but exclaim as if he had sensed something. He was shocked, and he could not help but clench his fist. He simply couldn't believe that the prophecy sage seal in his hand was actually reacting. The voice had said that the prophecy seal would react when it encountered the prophecy child. Chapter 40:21. The prophecy seal suddenly reacted, causing Nie Tian to be extremely shocked. Could it be that the prophecy child was in the Bloodnet Manor? Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly. The shock in his heart could not be concealed on his face. High Priest, are you all right? Jiutian Wangchuan saw that Nie Tian's expression was not right and frowned as he asked. I'm fine. Nie Tian reacted and smiled faintly. He did not say anything else. He was still unsure of the situation with the prophecy seal, so he did not say much. If I really found the prophecy child so easily, it would be too easy. Nie Tian laughed bitterly. He had just obtained the fake prophecy child. Was he going to give it away now? Jiutian Wangchuan looked at Nie Tian with a face full of doubt but did not continue asking. After a while, the crowd arrived at the great hall of the Blood Net Manor. Wu Luofeng and the rest were already waiting outside. Grand Elder, how is it? Wu Luofeng saw that the crowd had returned and his eyes trembled slightly. He stepped forward and asked anxiously. Wu Luofeng, quickly come and greet the High Priest. Wu Luoxin's face was solemn and cold. This. Wu Luofeng's eyes narrowed and he was speechless. What are you still standing there for? Wu Luoxin's eyes dimmed as he spoke again. Wu Luofeng greets the High Priest. Wu Luofeng finally reacted. He stared at Nie Tian with shock and fear in his eyes. He bowed deeply, afraid that others would notice his disrespect. Gui Jisheng greets the High Priest. Yu Wuming greets the High Priest. Almost at the same time, Gui Jisheng and Yu Wuming reacted and stepped forward and bowed. Get up. Nie Tian indifferently smiled. It felt good to have these arrogant geniuses lower their heads in front of him. Wu Luofeng and the rest stood up, but all of them avoided looking at Nie Tian. It was obvious that they were extremely fearful of him. We'll let bygones be bygones. Nie Tian looked at the three and said with a faint smile, "But from now on, you must remember that I am the Grand Priest of the four races." The eyes of Wu Luofeng and the rest quivered as they nodded repeatedly. "All right, let's shake hands now." Nie Tian smiled again and extended his hand. Wu Luofeng and the rest could not help but be stunned. They stood on the spot and could not react for a long time. Nie Tian was already the high priest of the four clans, and his status was even higher than that of the four clan leaders. Was there a need for him to shake hands with these people so formally? "What? Don't you want to make peace with me?" When Nie Tian saw that the three of them were not moving, his eyes darkened, and he asked in a cold tone. "Of course not, of course not." Wu Luofeng reacted immediately. He took a step forward and held onto Nie Tian's hand. His entire body was clearly trembling. Then, Gui Jixing and Yu Wuming stepped forward and shook hands with Nie Tian. "Looks like it's not the three of them." Nie Tian frowned and laughed bitterly in his heart. What he did earlier was actually to test if Wu Luofeng and the other two were the prophesied children. Although the prophecy seal was still reacting, Wu Luofeng and the other two didn't bring any changes to the prophecy seal. Without a doubt, this meant that the three of them were not the prophesied children. The three of them should be the most talented among the young martial artists present, but none of them were the prophesied children. If that was the case, things would be a little troublesome. Nie Tian's current identity was the prophesied child. He could not ask Xie Tianichi to gather all the young martial artists and test them one by one. Plus, he felt that if the prophecy seal met the real prophesied children, it would have a more obvious and stronger reaction. "Grand Priest, what did you see in the Heaven's Monument?" After a while, everyone entered the great hall and sat down. Xie Tianichi couldn't help but ask. "I can't remember. After leaving the Heaven's Monument, I seem to have lost some of my memories." Nie Tianichi smiled bitterly and said calmly. It was best not to tell Xie Tianichi and the others about what had happened in the Heaven's Monument. Xie Tianichi's eyes froze. He could tell that Nie Tian didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask any further. Then, Xie Tianichi and the others discussed the matter of Nie Tian becoming the Grand Priest. They wanted the four clans to unite and hold a grand inauguration ceremony. However, Nie Tian stopped them. He didn't want to create too much of a commotion. It was better to keep a low profile. His identity as the Grand Priest was only needed to be known by Xie Tianichi and the others. After all, he was too young and weak. Plus, he was an outsider. If he were to announce this to the four ancient sacred clans, there would definitely be a lot of opposition. For the sake of the stability of the four ancient sacred clans, it was best not to announce this to the public. Xie Tianichi and the others thought for a while and felt that what Nie Tian said was reasonable. Hence they agreed. As Nie Tian's matter came to an end, Wu Luoxin and the others bid farewell and left. They returned to their clans and reported what had happened to their respective clan leaders. As for Wu Luofeng and the others, they were told to keep a low profile. The matter regarding the Grand Priest has finally come to an end. I never expected the Grand Priest to be the legendary prophecy child. After Wu Luoxin and the others left, Xie Tianichi laughed heartily. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. Nie Tian was now the Grand Priest of the four clans. Moreover, he was the prophecy child. His position in the four ancient sacred clans was definitely supreme and above everyone else. As Nie Tian was discovered by the Parting Sky clan, he had a close relationship with the Parting Sky clan. Hence, Xie Tianichi was naturally happy. Nie Tian couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Lord Clan Chief, what do you mean by the prophesied child you speak of?" Until now, he still had no idea what the prophecy child meant. "Grand Priest, we're not sure what the prophecy child means either." Xie Tianichi looked at Nie Tian and said with a wry smile, "A long time ago, there was a prophecy on the firmament monument. It said that a young martial artist would appear in the future, and he would be the prophecy child. This person would completely change the fate of the 4 ancient sacred clans. After the firmament monument appeared, the 4 ancient sacred clans left the all-heaven sacred realm and went into seclusion. I really never thought that the legendary prophesied child would actually come from the all-heaven sacred world. Xie Tian-ichi shook his head in disbelief. Nie Tian furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment. Chapter 40-22. So that's how it is. Nie Tian's eyes quivered as he was overjoyed. Could the prophesied child be born in the Parting Sky clan? Lord Clan Leader, can I meet the prodigies of the Parting Sky clan? Nie Tian suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked. Of course. Although Xie Tian-ichi did not know what Nie Tian was up to, he agreed readily and said, High Priest, our Parting Sky clan has many prodigies among the younger generation. There are hundreds of thousands of cultivators who have reached the sage realm before the age of 100. I wonder, Lord Clan Leader. Nie Tian did not wait for Xie Tian-ichi to finish and interrupted him with a smile. The prodigies I want to meet must be on the same level as Outyen Chigu, or even stronger than Outyen Chigu. This. Xie Tian-ichi frowned as his expression stiffened. Is there any difficulty? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he asked. High Priest, to be honest, Xie Tian-ichi smiled awkwardly. Xie Tian-ichi smiled awkwardly and said, Xie Tian-chio's talent is already considered top-notch among the younger generation of the Pardon Heaven clan. There are less than a handful of people stronger than him in the entire clan. Xie Tian-ichi felt that Nie Tian wanted to see the overall strength of the Parting Sky clan. Furthermore, he believed that in Nie Tian's eyes, Outyen Chigu's talent shouldn't be too strong. After all, compared to Nie Tian, Outyen Chigu was indeed far inferior. That's right, Outyen Chigu was much younger than Nie Tian and stronger than Nie Tian. However, his potential was far from Nie Tian's. If Nie Tian had Outyen Chigu's strength, he could definitely kill the latter in a single move. However, Outyen Chigu was definitely a top-notch genius in the Pardon Sky clan. There were only a few people who were stronger than him in the entire clan. That's great. Let these people come and see me. Nie Tian smiled faintly and nodded. He didn't want to see too many people. The fewer the people, the more relaxed he would be. High Priest, there are a few people who are training outside and not in the residence. Currently, there's only one person in the residence whose talent is similar to that of Outyen Chigu, But at this moment, Xie Tian-ichi hesitated once more. What's wrong with that person? Nie Tian frowned in confusion. He did not care about the other geniuses who were not in the mansion. According to the reaction of the prophecy seal, the child of prophecy should be in the Blood Net mansion. Xie Tian's expression was unsightly. He thought for a moment and finally said, He was born with an incomplete mind and is often in a berserk state. He's really not suitable to meet people. Clan Leader, I want to meet this person. Nie Tian-ichi smiled and said faintly with an extremely determined gaze. All right. Xie Tian-ichi hesitated for a long time before finally nodding in agreement. Jiutian Wangchuan stood at the side with an equally unsightly expression. Subsequently, Xie Tian-ichi brought Nie Tian out of the hall and personally accompanied him to find that person. A moment later, Nie Tian and the others arrived at a remote courtyard in the Blood Net mansion. Before entering the courtyard, Nie Tian felt an oppressive force rushing towards him. What a powerful seal! Nie Tian frowned and could not help but exclaim. He discovered that the entire courtyard in front of him was enveloped by a huge seal, and the pressure from the seal made him feel like he was suffocating. High Priest, that person is in the courtyard. In order to stabilize him, we have no choice but to use the seal to suppress him. Xie Tian-ichi shook his head with a wry smile. He then took a step forward and formed a seal with his hand, forcefully tearing the seal open and revealing a sealed door. Nie Tian could not help but feel even more curious. Just what kind of person would require such a seal to suppress him? High priest, please. Xie Tian-ichi took a step forward and entered the courtyard, with Nie Tian following behind. The moment he entered the courtyard, Nie Tian's expression flickered. He felt that the pressure from the seal had increased by several times, and even his face had turned slightly red. Fortunately, his martial physique far surpassed cultivators of the same level. Otherwise, he would not be able to withstand such pressure. Apart from this oppressive force, there was also a violent stench of blood. It was thick and pungent, giving people a strong impact. Clang! Roar! At that moment, the sound of metal chains rolling was heard, followed by a deep roar that sounded like that of a wild beast. Nie Tian's eyes flickered. He took a closer look and saw a figure emitting a violent aura. The figure looked extremely muscular, standing at 2 meters tall. His body was surrounded by a boiling aura, like a burning flame. His long hair was in a mess, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, his aura was like a ferocious beast in a frenzied state. Is that the person? Nie Tian's eyes focused as his expression darkened. Xie Tianichi nodded and said, "His name is Xie Tianquang. He's only 12 years old this year." 12 years old? Nie Tian-ichi's eyes flickered in astonishment. The aura he sensed from Xie Tianquang was much stronger than that of Outyen Chigu. Furthermore, such a powerful person was only 12 years old. Then, Nie Tian used his divine sense to check and realized that Xie Tianquang was only at the 9th level of heavenly righteousness. Xie Tianquang's strength was below Outyen Chigu, but his aura was stronger than the latter. Without a doubt, this meant that his bloodline power and talent were much more terrifying than Outyen Chigu's. At this moment, Xie Tianquang's hands and feet were chained up by metal chains. However, his aura was still extremely violent. He was born with this cultivation, but he never cultivated. Xie Tianichi frowned and said in a deep voice, "When Xie Tianquang first appeared, his innate strength was at the 9th level of heavenly righteousness. For millions of years, the Xie Tian clan had never had such a powerful innate strength. At that time, the Xie Tian clan thought that they had welcomed a peerless genius. However, who would have thought that Xie Tianquang was born with an incomplete mind and often went berserk, injuring and killing many people. In the end, Xie Tian-ichi had no choice but to imprison him. From the look of it, he's far more talented than the 7 heaven-pardoning bones." Nie Tian exclaimed, clenching his fist. The prophecy saint's seal didn't change in front of Xie Tianquang. It seemed like Xie Tianquang wasn't the child of prophecy. Nie Tian felt that it was a pity for such a genius to be crippled just like that. Roar! At this moment, Xie Tianquang suddenly roared and raised his head. His eyes stared at Nie Tian like a shining star, with a hint of clarity amidst the violence. Nie Tian frowned and his heart skipped a beat. He could clearly sense a familiar aura from Xie Tianquang's eyes. Boom! At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a violent force appear in his body, causing him to tremble and take a few steps back. Chapter 40-23. 9th Extreme Chaos Beast Resonance. Nie Tian's face was filled with shock and disbelief. He could not believe what he was seeing. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that there was a power in Xie Tianquang's body that could resonate with his 9th Extreme Chaos Beast. "High Priest, are you all right?" Seeing the shocked expression on Nie Tian's face, Xie Tian-ichi immediately took a step forward and stood in front of Xie Tianquang. Xie Tianquang was extremely unstable. Countless members of the Xie Tian race had died at his hands. Nie Tian had just become the high priest of the 4 races. If he was injured by Xie Tianquang, it would be hard to explain to the other 3 races. "I'm fine." Nie Tian suppressed the shock in his heart and replied calmly. "High priest, let's go. Xie Tianquang has lost control of his mind. It is too dangerous for you to stay here." Xie Tianichi said and prepared to leave with Nie Tian. Wait a minute. But Nie Tian was unwilling to leave. He had not figured out the power in Xie Tianquang's body. How could he leave in such a muddle-headed manner? Actually, this was not the first time Nie Tian had experienced the ninth extreme Chaos Beast resonance. Previously, when he was fighting the demon race's devil son, Xiao Wanjie, a power in the latter's body had caused the ninth extreme Chaos Beast resonance. After that, Mori Shire said that the power in Xiao Wanjie's body came from the night elephant. It seemed like the night elephant was in existence very similar to the ninth extreme Chaos Beast. It was very likely that they came from the same power. And now, Nie Tian felt the ninth extreme Chaos Beast resonance in front of Xie Tianquang again. Could there be an existence similar to the ninth extreme Chaos Beast in Xie Tianquang's body? Nie Tian was extremely shocked. He could not help but walk towards Xie Tianquang. Great Priest! When Xie Tian Ichi caught sight of this, he could not help but feel his heart skip a beat as his face froze up. Xie Tianquang was violent and hard to control. If he suddenly attacked, he could directly take Nie Tian's life. Xie Tian Ichi knew that Nie Tian was not an ordinary martial artist. However, Xie Tianquang's strength was not something that Aotian Chigu could compare to. Xie Tian Ichi had personally witnessed a ninth-level heavenly tribulation sage king of the Xie Tian clan being heavily injured by a single palm strike from Xie Tianquang. Nie Tian's talent was indeed frightening, but no matter how frightening, he was only a second-stage heavenly justice great lord. It was no exaggeration to say that Nie Tian had no way of fighting back in front of Xie Tianquang. Roar! At this moment, Xie Tianquang let out a low roar. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Nie Tian. However, the surging blood energy around him was gradually calming down, and his entire being was slowly stabilizing. This! Xie Tian Ichi's eyes trembled as he was stunned by this scene. His mouth was wide open, yet he couldn't say a word. This scene was simply too strange. Xie Tianquang was actually about to calm down. One had to know that the entire Pardon Sky clan, be it Xie Tianquang's kin or other experts, had used countless methods to calm Xie Tianquang down. But in front of Nie Tian, Xie Tianquang actually calmed down. This was truly too strange. At this moment, Nie Tian was getting closer to Xie Tianquang. The 9 extreme resonance in his body was also getting stronger. He felt as though there was a raging beast roaring in his body, making him feel a tearing pain. However, he endured the pain and continued to approach Xie Tianquang. The closer Nie Tian got to Xie Tianquang, the stronger the resonance in his body became. Yet, Xie Tianquang actually calmed down. His bloodshot eyes gradually faded and returned to normal. In the end, that pair of eyes actually became bright, clear, and sparkling like stars. Nie Tian's heart couldn't help but tremble. He found it hard to believe that the bloodshot eyes and the bright eyes in front of him were actually the same person. Xie Tianichi, who was at the side, was completely shocked by the scene in front of him. He was stunned on the spot and couldn't say a word. He couldn't understand what was going on in front of him. At this moment, the blood qi around Xie Tianquang's body disappeared. He was extremely calm and stood there, giving off a feeling of innocence. Nie Tian looked at Xie Tianquang and took a deep breath to calm himself down. He tried to say, "My name is Nie Tian." Bitter, bitter, bitter. Xie Tianquang's lips were trembling. It was obvious that he wanted to say something, but it was extremely difficult. Bitter. Nie Tian frowned, confusion filling his face. He didn't expect that the first word out of Xie Tianquang's mouth would be bitter. Could he be saying that he had been living a bitter life for the past dozen years? However, this didn't sound like something a mentally unstable person would say. Bitter, 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 Quang. At this moment, Xie Tianquang finally said it with a trembling voice. "You're saying that your name is Quang?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He immediately realized that Xie Tianquang wasn't going to say bitter, but crazy. He was clearly introducing himself. Xie Tianquang's bright eyes flickered with joy as he nodded repeatedly like a child. However, he was indeed a child. Although he was close to 2 meters tall, he was only 12 years old. Even a normal 12-year-old's mind was far inferior to an adult's. He actually. Xie Tianquang finally reacted, but his lips were trembling. He was so excited that he couldn't say a word. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that Xie Tianquang could actually speak. Could it be that Xie Tianquang's mind had recovered? At this moment, Nye Tian also felt strange. The 9 extremities resonance in his body had mysteriously disappeared. Could it be that the power in Xie Tianquang's body has disappeared? Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he thought to himself. Or is the power within him being suppressed? At this moment, he really hoped that Fat Cat would speak. However, the latter didn't have any reaction, clearly not understanding what was happening. Regardless, it was a good thing that Xie Tianquang had calmed down. Lord Patriarch, please remove the chains on Xie Tianquang. Nye Tian used his divine sense to check on Xie Tianquang's body. After confirming that the latter's aura had completely calmed down, he said to Xie Tianquang, "This." Xie Tianquang was stunned and his expression was extremely ugly. Although Xie Tianquang had calmed down, he wasn't sure if he would suddenly go berserk. Under such circumstances, removing the chains didn't seem very wise. "Clan leader, trust me." Nye Tian nodded slightly and smiled. Even if Xie Tianquang loses control later, there's still clan leader. All right. Xie Tianquang hesitated for a long time before finally nodding in agreement. He took a step forward and streaks of runes surged out of his palm. They surged across the chains on Xie Tianquang's body, and they automatically fell off. Chapter 40-24. Sensing the change in Xie Tianquang's aura, Xie Tianichi's expression darkened and he wanted to suppress it. Clan leader. However, Nye Tian suddenly spoke and gestured for Xie Tianichi not to be rash. Xie Tianichi's eyes narrowed and his aura weakened. Boom! Xie Tianquang slapped out with his palm, and a violent power of lightning appeared in the void. It whistled through the air and shot towards Xie Tianichi. Xie Tianichi's expression darkened, and he easily neutralized the power of lightning with just a shake of his body. With his strength, Xie Tianquang could do nothing to him even if he stood still. Roar! Following that, Xie Tianquang suddenly roared, and the power of lightning around him surged. His eyes turned even redder and he looked like a raging beast. Xie Tianquang! Nye Tian's eyes darkened and he roared at Xie Tianquang. Xie Tianquang seemed to be impacted by something and his body froze. He then looked at Nye Tian and the redness in his eyes gradually weakened. It's fine, it's fine. Nye Tian took a deep breath and said calmly. He slowly walked to Xie Tianquang's side and the latter actually calmed down miraculously. Xie Tianichi frowned and was completely dumbfounded by the scene before him. It seemed like Xie Tianquang was very obedient to Nye Tian. He locked me up. Xie Tianquang calmed down and pointed at Xie Tianichi with hatred. Bad guy. Upon seeing this, Nye Tian immediately understood. So Xie Tianquang still remembered that Xie Tianichi was the one who locked him up. That was why he treated Xie Tianichi as a bad guy and attacked him. Xie Tianichi naturally understood as well and could not help but laugh bitterly with a helpless expression. He was indeed the one who captured Xie Tianquang back then. He could not deny that. However, he was rather happy that Xie Tianquang remembered these things. It meant that he had not completely lost his mind. Based on the current situation, it was very likely that he had recovered. Clan leader, let's leave first. Nye Tian smiled and prepared to leave. Then, the 3 of them left the courtyard. Xie Tianquang followed closely behind Nye Tian as though he was seeking protection. Along the way, everyone was shocked to see Xie Tianquang. They didn't expect him to be released. However, what surprised them more was how calm Xie Tianquang was. Next, Nye Tian and Xie Tianquang cleaned up, took a shower, and changed into a new set of clothes. Because Xie Tianquang would only be calm when Nie Tian was around, Nie Tian had personally watched him complete these things. Nie Tian walked out of the room with Xie Tianquang. The latter's aura was already very stable, and he gave off a sharp feeling. Not bad, not bad. Xie Tianichi looked at Xie Tianquang and couldn't help but praise. To be honest, Xie Tianquang's looks were outstanding. Although he was a shocking 2 meters tall, his facial features were delicate, and there was a hint of childishness between his brows. It gave people a very comfortable feeling. I didn't expect you to have grown so big. Xie Tianichi was moved, and his eyes were even moist. Back when Xie Tianquang was born, the entire Pardon Heaven clan had placed high hopes on him. However, what happened later was very disappointing. Xie Tianquang lost control of himself, and many Pardon Heaven clan martial artists died in his hand. This caused a lot of resentment in the clan. However, many people advocated for killing Xie Tianquang to prevent future troubles. Because many people were afraid that once Xie Tianquang matured and became strong, there would probably be very few people in the entire Pardon Heaven clan who could restrain him. If that time came, it would be terrible. It was Xie Tianichi who stood against the majority and adopted a compromise method to imprison Xie Tianquang. For more than a decade, Xie Tianquang's strength didn't increase much, but his berserk aura became more and more intense. Fortunately, Nie Tian appeared and allowed Xie Tianquang to return to normal. Otherwise, his final outcome would probably be very tragic. Until now, Xie Tianichi still didn't understand how Nie Tian managed to calm Xie Tianquang down. Actually, even Nie Tian didn't know what happened to Xie Tianquang. At this moment, Xie Tianquang glared angrily at Xie Tianichi and shouted, "Bad person!" Xie Tianichi laughed bitterly and shook his head. "Looks like I've really become a bad person." "Xiao Quang, he's not a bad person. He's your elder, your kin. You must respect him, understand?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said to Xie Tianichi very seriously, "Amen, I understand." Xie Tianquang frowned and had a look of doubt. He seemed to be suspicious, but he still nodded in the end. At this moment, Xie Tianquang's mentality seemed to have matured a little more than before. "Nie Tian, looks like I'll have to trouble you to take care of Xie Tianquang," Xie Tianichi said with a slight nod. He could already tell that apart from Nie Tian, Xie Tianichi didn't trust anyone. Since it was Nie Tian who stabilized Xie Tianquang, the best arrangement for Xie Tianquang would be for him to stay by Nie Tian's side. "All right." Nie Tian agreed readily. Xie Tianichi's request was exactly what he wanted. He really wanted to know what kind of power was hidden in Xie Tianquang's body. Following that, Nie Tian and Xie Tianichi exchanged a few more words before bidding farewell. He was prepared to return to check on Mori Shire and Tang 13. After a while, Nie Tian brought Xie Tianquang to the courtyard. At this moment, Nie Tian actually felt the prophecy seal in his palm, had an extremely strong reaction. It was as though it was being burned and there was an obvious burning sensation. "What's going on?" Nie Tian's expression changed and he was shocked. The prophecy seal had a reaction. Could it be that the child of the prophecy of the 4 ancient sacred clans was in this courtyard? However, there were only a few outsiders in this courtyard. There was no one from the ancient sacred clans. Mori Shire, Sky's Saintess, Tang 13, Tang Yuyu, and Jun Jianxing. These were the 5 people in the courtyard. Could it be that the child of the prophecy was one of them? This thought made Nie Tian's heart skip a beat. He was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. "Nie Tian, are you all right?" Xie Tianquang saw that Nie Tian's expression was strange and asked in an unfamiliar voice. "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and entered the courtyard. He wanted to know who had triggered the reaction of the prophecy seal. Previously, he had been paying attention to the martial artists of the 4 ancient sacred clans. He didn't expect that the people who had triggered the reaction of the prophecy seal were the people he was most familiar with. Mori Shire. As soon as he stepped into the courtyard, Nye Tian saw Mori Shire walking out. His heart skipped a beat. If Mori Shire was the child of the prophecy, it would be unexpected. Thunder Ape! At this moment, Mori Shire glanced at Nye Tian and locked his gaze on Xie Tianquang. His expression changed and he exclaimed in shock. Roar! Almost at the same time, Xie Tianquang suddenly let out a deep roar, following which a terrifying power of lightning surged out of his body. Chapter 40-25. Boom! Xie Tianquang suddenly lost control and the power of thunder surged violently. The surrounding void rumbled as though it was about to collapse. Nye Tian snapped out of his daze and exclaimed, "Pardon Tianquang!" However, in the next moment, his expression went blank again. He saw that Xie Tianquang's eyes were extremely red and there were lightning surging around him. His aura was extremely violent, as though he was a wild beast that had been locked in a cage for a long time and had finally broken free. His ferocious aura seemed to want to tear everything in front of him apart. Nye Tian's heart sank. This time, Xie Tianquang was even more violent than before. Oh no! Mori Shire's eyes trembled as he yelled in horror. Boom! At this moment, Xie Tianquang punched out violently. A massive thunder fist shadow appeared and blasted towards Mori Shire, causing a terrifying explosion in the void. Bang! Doomsday's eyes trembled, and before he could react, he was sent flying backward. Mori Shire! Nye Tian's eyes trembled violently. He moved instantly and saw Mori Shire lying on the ground. His body was covered in blood, and he had actually fainted. One punch. Just one punch and Xie Tianquang had severely injured Mori Shire. Indeed, Xie Tianquang was much stronger than Mori Shire. However, Mori Shire wasn't the type of person that could be judged based on his cultivation. Nye Tian hadn't interacted with Mori Shire for a long time, but the power that the latter displayed had always amazed him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that an ordinary ninth heaven righteousness great sage wouldn't even have the chance to approach Mori Shire. However, Xie Tianquang had beaten Mori Shire half to death with one punch. Roar! At this moment, Mori Shire let out a roar. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. Lightning surged around him as though the sky was enveloped in a sea of lightning. In the next moment, Xie Tianquang launched another attack. As he threw a punch, lightning power whizzed out like a mad dragon towards Nye Tian. In his berserk state, Xie Tianquang didn't even recognize Nye Tian. Damn it! Nye Tian let out a low roar and his eyes narrowed. The soul of the sky was instantly activated and the sword intent surged. Wherever the sword pointed, the shadow of the sword shot out like a mountain. Bang! Then, the lightning struck down violently, and the sword shadows in the air were directly shattered. Then, Nye Tian felt a terrifying strangling force coming at him, causing his eyes to tremble. In that moment of crisis, the astral soul wings on his back unfurled, and he retreated several meters with Apocalypse in tow. PFFF. After he stabilized himself, he vomited a mouthful of blood and his face was as pale as a sheet. This guy is so strong. Nye Tian's eyes were incomparably gloomy as his heart was filled with shock. Xie Tianquang's strength was more terrifying than he had imagined. One must know that the strength Xie Tianquang displayed was his own strength. He didn't receive any martial arts or martial technique. Xie Tianquang was born with a lack of intelligence and didn't have the chance to cultivate martial arts or martial technique. Given his current strength, if he were to cultivate high-grade martial arts or martial techniques, his current strength would at least increase by a few times. Nye Tian, who's this big guy? At this moment, the Sky Saintess and the others exclaimed when they came out from their rooms. Help me! Nye Tian's eyes turned dark as he let out a low roar and stepped out, blocking Xie Tianquang's path. Among those present, his martial physique was the strongest, allowing him to face Xie Tianquang head-on. All right. The Saintess of Heaven responded. Her figure moved in an instant, and the desolate chi around her surged like a stormy sea, rolling and killing madly. "Don't hurt him. Just restrain him." Tian glanced at the Sky Saintess and said in a deep voice. The Sky Saintess was startled at first, but she soon nodded. The big guy in front of her was clearly not easy to deal with. It wouldn't be easy to restrain him without hurting him. Attack! In the next instant, Tian let out a deep roar as sword intent surged out from his body. He swung his sword, and the boundless sword intent turned into a net of swords that engulfed Xie Tianquang. At the same time, the Sky Saintess moved as well. Desolation Qi condensed into a giant hand in the air and grabbed at Xie Tianquang. Two powerful forces descended and forcefully suppressed Xie Tianquang. At this moment, Morishire suddenly woke up from his coma and yelled, "Tian, 9 extremities chaos." Tian's eyes narrowed as he failed to react in time. Roar. However, Xie Tianquang let out a deep roar. Lightning chi surged from his body, causing the rift to tremble. The net of swords and the giant hand crumbled at the same time. Xie Tianquang stomped the ground and soared into the sky like a raging dragon. The terrifying lightning energy surged from his body, causing dark clouds to gather in the sky, causing the entire area to darken. Tian and the Sky Saintess shuddered at the same time and were sent flying a few hundred meters away. So powerful! Tian stabilized his figure. His eyes trembled slightly as he felt an indescribable shock in his heart. He and the Sky Saintess had used the Heart of the Sky and the Heart of Desolation to suppress Xie Tianquang, yet they had failed to do so. Instead, the latter had become even more berserk. Tian. The Sky Saintess' eyes flickered as she looked into the sky and exclaimed. Tian frowned as he looked at Xie Tianquang, who was in the sky. He was stunned by what he saw. At this moment, Xie Tianquang's body had changed. He was 5 to 6 meters tall, and his hands and feet were covered in silver fur that looked like steel needles. His face was no longer as young and delicate as before. Instead, it had become extremely ferocious and terrifying. From afar, Xie Tianquang looked like a ferocious beast. "This fellow's body has actually merged with the Thunder Ape," Morishire exclaimed. His eyes were trembling nonstop as he looked extremely shocked. Thunder Ape? Tian's eyes trembled as he glanced at Morishire. This was the second time he had heard the name Thunder Ape from Morishire. Could the hidden power in Xie Tianquang's body have come from the Thunder Ape? Was the Thunder Ape an existence that could resonate with the 9th extreme chaos beast like the Night Elephant? It had to be said that the current Xie Tianquang really looked like a terrifying violent ape from afar. Morishire knew about the Thunder Ape, and Xie Tianquang had only lost control after seeing him. It was obvious that he knew about Xie Tianquang. "Morishire, what should we do?" Tian's face darkened as he growled. Chapter 40-26. Tian. Morishire stared at Tian as a cold light flickered in his eyes. His entire body emitted a chilling aura. Tian naturally understood and nodded his head. Boom. At this moment, Xie Tianquang made his move, slamming down with his palm. Instantly, a gigantic lightning storm appeared in the air, blotting out the sky like dark clouds, pressing down on Tian and the others. Almost at the same time, Tian, Morishire, and the Sky Saintess moved. The Sword of Sky, Scythe of the God of Death, and Hand of Desolation swept through the air at the same time. 3 powerful forces gushed forth, converging in midair, fusing into a terrifying sword shadow that soared into the clouds. Rumble! Boom boom boom! In the next instant the lightning storm descended as the sword shadow shot up, clashing with each other, causing the surrounding space to rumble and the heavens and earth to tremble. It was as though doomsday had arrived. Violent shock waves blasted out in all directions, wreaking havoc in the air, as though wanting to destroy everything. Tian and the other 2 shuddered as they were forced to retreat. Boom! At this moment, An explosion rang out in the air as the terrifying lightning storm was forcefully torn apart. The sword's shadow shot out, aiming for Xie Tianquang. Seeing this, Nie Tian's eyes trembled. Astral soul wings appeared on his back as he dashed forward. Next, the sword's shadow actually split apart in mid-air, transforming into a boundless sword net that enveloped Xie Tianquang. Roar! Xie Tianquang roared in a frenzy, but under the suppression of the sword net, he was unable to unleash his lightning energy. Finally under control, Nie Tianling stood in the air, heaving a sigh of relief. He, Mori Shire, and the Sky Saintess worked together to activate the Three Hearts Resonance, finally suppressing Xie Tianquang. The Three Hearts Resonance was once used against Wu Luofeng's Wu Luo Dark World. But at that time, Nie Tian had released Three-Hearted Resonance alone, and its power was far less than it was now. Right now, the three of them were much stronger than they were a few days ago, and their teamwork was much better. Therefore, the power of Three-Hearted Resonance was many times stronger than before. Even so, they could only barely suppress Xie Tianquang. From this, one could see how strong Xie Tianquang was. It was no exaggeration to say that experts like Outyen Chigu and Wu Luofeng would not even have the strength to fight back in front of Xie Tianquang. Boom! 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 At this moment, the power of lightning around Xie Tianquang suddenly surged and crashed into the sword net again and again. The massive sword net actually began to wobble, as though it could not hold on any longer. Nie Tian's face darkened, and he began to worry. He didn't expect Xie Tianquang's power to continue growing as though there was no limit. If this continued, the sword net wouldn't be able to last much longer. Nie Tian. At this moment, Mori Shire came to Nie Tian's side and shouted, "Mori Shire, what should we do?" Nie Tian frowned and asked directly. "The Thunder Ape has too much of an influence on him. If we want him to calm down, we have to take a risk." Mori Shire looked at Xie Tianquang and spoke in a cold tone. There was clearly a tinge of excitement in his eyes. "What exactly is the Thunder Ape that you speak of?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he couldn't help but ask. "It's the same as Xiao Wan's Night Elephant," Mori Shire said in a low voice, but he didn't explain much. Indeed. Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat. He had guessed correctly. The Thunder Ape in Xie Tianquang's body was just like Xiao Wan's Night Elephant. They were both related to the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. It was no wonder that the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast resonated with him when he approached Xie Tianquang previously. Perhaps it was because of this that Xie Tianquang calmed down. In that case, why did the already calm Xie Tianquang suddenly lose control after seeing the sword Dao of Mori Shire? Could it be that Mori Shire's body had the power to activate the Thunder Ape? Nie Tian, you have to use your 9 Extreme Chaos Beast to suppress the Thunder Ape. Mori Shire looked at Nie Tian and said in a low voice. This. Nie Tian frowned and his expression turned ugly. It was a little difficult for him to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Firstly, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was sealed and could only be released under certain extreme circumstances. Secondly, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast could not be used casually. It would be troublesome if it attracted the attention of Ni Yuan Haigen's men. Don't worry, I will set up a barrier to prevent the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast's aura from being released. With the resonance of the Thunder Ape, it should not be difficult for you to release some of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast's aura. Mori Shire could tell that Nie Tian was worried and said in a low voice. Nie Tian frowned. He had a feeling that Mori Shire was hiding something from him. However, at this point, he had no other choice but to follow Mori Shire's instructions. At this time, Mori Shire's figure moved, and he leaped into the sky. A scroll appeared in his hand, and he opened it directly. Instantly, waves of runic power appeared and formed a huge barrier that enveloped the surrounding void. Nie Tian could feel the aura within the barrier, and his heart shuddered involuntarily. That aura actually caused the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast in his body to become restless for some reason. Mori Shire, who exactly are you? Nye Tion's gaze darkened as he looked at Mori Shire from afar. He could not help but feel wary. From the day the 12th apocalypse appeared, there was an unfathomable secret on his body. Mori Shire was born from an evil heart. He knew a lot of things, and every single one of them was something that ordinary people could not possibly know. The demon race's devil son, Xiao Wanjie, the myriad sound demon palace's young lord, Gong Yuzigi. These people were all cowering in fear in front of Mori Shire. All these things showed that Mori Shire was not simple. However, at this time, Nye Tian did not have time to think too much. Dealing with Xie Tianquang's matter was more important. Boom! At this time, the lightning aura around Xie Tianquang's body became even more frightening. It crashed against the sword net, and booming sounds were incessant. The sword net was shaking, and it seemed like it was about to collapse. Nye Tian. Mori Shire set up the barrier and shouted at Nye Tian. Nye Tian responded and flew out. He felt the power of lightning in the void and tried to break through the barrier and release the 9 Extreme Chaos Beasts' aura. However, since he had released the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast during his battle with Xiao Wanjie, the barrier that imprisoned the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast seemed to have become stronger. At this time, even with the Thunder Ape's resonance, it was difficult for him to release the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Roar! At this moment, Xie Tianquang suddenly let out a roar. Immediately, bolts of powerful lightning appeared and forcefully broke through the sword net. Bang bang bang! The sword shadows collapsed, and the entire sword net was about to be destroyed. Nye Tian. Mori Shire's eyes trembled when he saw this. He shouted and his body shook. A dark aura appeared and enveloped Nye Tian. Chapter 40:27. How can this be? Nye Tian suddenly felt the violent aura of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. His expression changed, and his heart was filled with shock. The dark aura that Mori Shire had released had actually made the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast restless. What was going on? Vaguely, Nye Tian felt that the dark aura was actually similar to the aura of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. This discovery shocked him. Could Mori Shire be like Xiao Wanjie and Xie Tianquang? Could they all have some kind of power similar to the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast? Nye Tian, what are you waiting for? At this time, Mori Shire shouted. He was obviously a little anxious. Nye Tian responded. His body shook slightly. Instantly, a wave of 9 extreme qi was released. It formed a whirlpool and enveloped Xie Tianquang. He really wanted to find out what kind of power was behind Mori Shire, but at this time, the most important thing was still Xie Tianquang. After releasing the 9 extreme qi, Nye Tian started to suppress the 9 extreme chaos beast. He did not want the 9 extreme chaos beast to break out of its seal at this time. At the same time, Mori Shire waved his hand and released another wave of dark power. It enveloped Nye Tian's 9 extreme qi and merged it into one power. Then, it attacked Xie Tianquang. Roar! Like a wild beast, Xie Tianquang roared like thunder. The violent aura from his body rushed into the sky, and the sky and earth shook. However, when the fusion power appeared, a look of astonishment appeared on his face. He seemed to feel that the merged power was a huge threat to him. In the next moment, the merged power landed and entered Xie Tianquang's body. Instantly, the violent Thunder Ape body was suppressed. His body started to shrink, and he quickly shrank back to his original state. Success! When Nye Tian saw this, his eyes trembled, and he exclaimed in surprise. Then, his figure moved, broke through the broken sword net, and he caught the unconscious Xie Tianquang. Mori Shire let out a long sigh of relief, and his taut face relaxed. Nye Tian landed with Xie Tianquang and placed the latter in the room before walking out. Mori Shire, are you okay? Nye Tian came to Mori Shire's side and asked with a frown when he saw that the latter's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. I've just recovered. Looks like I'll have to rest for a few more days. Mori Shire smiled bitterly, a helpless expression on his face. Xie Tianquang's punch had severely injured him. Fortunately, Xie Tianquang wasn't too violent back then. Otherwise, he would have been a corpse by now. Xie Tianquang fainted. He should be fine, right? Nie Tian nodded and asked. Don't worry, he's fine. When he wakes up, his mind should be back to normal. Mori Shire said with a faint smile. Nie Tian frowned and his face was filled with shock. Mori Shire actually knew that Xie Tianquang was originally a mentally unstable person. Xie Tianquang had lost control as soon as he saw Mori Shire. How did Mori Shire know that? The thing in his body is called the Thunder Ape. Of course, Mori Shire knew what Nie Tian was thinking. His lips twitched as he said, the Thunder Ape, your nine-extremity chaos beast, and the night elephant that cultivates the 10,000 calamities all originate from the same place. It's the power of the Thunder Ape that suppressed his mind and caused him to lose control of his divine soul. We've already suppressed the power of the Thunder Ape just now. Given his talent, he should be able to control it in the future. The chances of him losing control again are very low. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he stared at Mori Shire. What about you? Me? Mori Shire frowned, and he could not help but be stunned. He smiled and said, Me what? Mori Shire, you and I are both smart people. Why play dumb? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, You have a power similar to the nine-extremity chaos beast in your body, right? Yes. Mori Shire shook his head and smiled. He finally admitted it. But this is my business, and I don't have to tell you. Also, there's no point in knowing about the nine-extremity chaos beast now. It will only bring you harm and no benefit. Is that so? Nie Tian's eyes hardened, and he did not deny it. Nie Tian, perhaps one day we'll have to stand on opposite sides, Nie Tian said. Mori Shire's expression changed slightly, and he became much more solemn. He said, But now I am definitely not your enemy. I hope so. Nie Tian nodded and smiled. He did not say anything else. Mori Shire obviously did not want to tell him too much, nor did he want to fall out with him. It was best for them to maintain their current relationship. I'll go and rest first. Mori Shire nodded and went back to his room. Following that, the Heaven Lady and the others came over to find out what had happened. Nie Tian gave a simple explanation without revealing too much. In the next few days, Nie Tian and the others recuperated in the small courtyard. After Xie Tianquang woke up, he was completely awake, just as Mori Shire had said. His mind was back to normal. He was just a little shy and rarely spoke to others. He only trusted Nie Tian. A few days later, Xie Tianquang sent someone to inform Nie Tian that the training in the Yin Moon Forest had ended. The people from the Pardon Sky clan had sent the cultivators from the All-Heaven Sacred World back. Since the training was over, Nie Tian decided not to stay any longer. He prepared to return to the Southern Brilliance Sacred World immediately. Xie Tianquang wanted to inform the people from the other three clans to send Nie Tian off together, but Nie Tian stopped him. Nie Tian was still too weak. Even the high priest of the four clans could not do much for the four ancient sacred clans. Hence, it was better to keep a low profile. Xie Tianquang did not object. He sent someone to send Nie Tian and the others out. Xie Tianquang also left with Nie Tian. After leaving Pardon Sky City, Nie Tian and the others returned to Vast Cloud Plaza. At this time, the cultivators who had just returned from the Yin Moon Forest were all gathered in the sky above the plaza, waiting for the next arrangement of the 5 academies. After a while, the people from the 5 academies appeared. A gray-robed old man stood in the sky and swept his gaze across everyone. He said in a deep voice, "Congratulations to everyone for passing the second test." 5 days later, the third test, Hidden Dragon Contest, began on Vast Cloud Plaza. Now, distribute the Hidden Dragon token. After obtaining the token, you can leave. After saying that, he waved his hand. Instantly, countless tokens flew out and landed steadily in front of all the cultivators. Everyone was excited when they received the hidden dragon token. Nye Tian, on the other hand, smiled bitterly. He didn't seem too happy. There were about 40 to 50,000 cultivators present. In other words, many cultivators lost their lives in the Een Moon Forest training. Actually, this was nothing much. Since they chose the path of a cultivator, they had to be aware of the danger at all times. There were countless geniuses in the world. Ultimately, those who could step foot into the peak of the martial Tao were destined to be few. This was the cruelty of the martial Tao world. Very soon, everyone left after receiving the hidden dragon token. Heaven Saintess, Tang 13, and the others also took their leave. When Mori Shire wanted to leave, he was stopped by Nye Tian. Because he still had one matter that he had to clarify, and that was regarding the prophecy Holy Seal. Previously at Blood Sift Manor, when Nye Tian encountered Mori Shire, the prophecy Holy Seal had a very strong reaction. At that time, he suspected if Mori Shire could be the prophecy child that he was searching for. But later on, Xie Tianquang lost control and Mori Shire was severely injured. Furthermore, the prophecy Holy Seal inexplicably stopped reacting. Hence, Nye Tian did not ask further. Chapter 40-28. When Nye Tian heard Apocalypse 12 mention the child of the prophecy, his expression darkened and his expression stiffened. He did not expect Mori Shire to know about the prophesied child. Nye Tian, I am not the person you are looking for, Mori Shire said with a faint smile. You know that I am looking for the prophesied child? Nye Tian asked with a shocked expression. Not only did Mori Shire know about the prophesied child, but he also knew that he was looking for the prophesied child. How could he not be shocked? The Sky Dome Emperor left the prophecy sacred seal on you. You are not the prophesied child, so there is only one possibility. You are the person who is looking for the prophesied child for him. Mori Shire smiled calmly. The Sky Dome Emperor. When Nye Tian heard this name, his eyes widened again, and he froze on the spot. Human Sovereign, the Sky Dome Emperor. To think that Mori Shire even knew this person. Back when Nye Tian obtained the prophecy sacred seal, Xie Tianichi told him that the Sky Dome steel was left behind by the Sky Dome Emperor, and his soul was in the Sky Dome steel. Hence, Xie Tianichi speculated that the person Nye Tian met on the Sky Dome steel was the human sovereign, the Sky Dome Emperor. At that time, Nye Tian was not sure. But now, he completely believed it. When these words came from Mori Shire, they sounded even more credible than Xie Tianichi. Mori Shire directly said that the person who left the prophecy sacred seal on Nye Tian was the Sky Dome Emperor. However, the Sky Dome Emperor was the human sovereign from a long time ago. He definitely existed before the 4 ancient sacred clans. How did Mori Shire know all this? Who exactly was Mori Shire? Nye Tian, the Sky Dome Emperor is willing to leave the prophecy sacred seal on you. This means that he values you very much. At this moment, Mori Shire spoke again with a calm expression. You want to find the prophesied child, and this is not a simple matter. You may suspect that I am the child of prophecy, but not at all. Fortunately, you are wrong. I'm not the person you're looking for. Then why did the sage seal of prophecy have such a strong reaction when I met you? Nye Tian frowned, and the way he looked at Mori Shire changed. There was a hint of oppression in his cold gaze. The sage seal of prophecy is very sensitive to many special powers. Mori Shire smiled faintly and said, When you meet the real prophecy child in the future, you will know how terrifying the prophecy seal's reaction is. What do you mean? Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and asked. The prophecy voice in your hand hasn't been activated yet. Mori Shire had a strange expression as he said, When you meet the prophecy child, it will also be the time when the sage seal of prophecy activates. Nye Tian noticed the strange expression on Mori Shire's face, and his heart sank. He said, When the Sky Dome Emperor left the Sage Seal of Prophecy in my hand, he said that I only have 3 years. If I can't find the prophecy child within 3 years, the Sage Seal of Prophecy will disappear, and I will disappear with it. Is this true? Mori Shire looked at Nia Tian and couldn't help but sneer. Nia Tian, you don't seem like the kind of person who trusts others so easily. The Sky Dome Emperor lied to me? Nia Tian frowned, and his expression changed in shock. He didn't lie to you. You really only have 3 years, Mori Shire laughed and said. To be more precise, you only have 3 years at most. Speak clearly, Nia Tian said with a gloomy and cold face. Nia Tian, I told you before that we are friends. Mori Shire smiled again and said, Then, as a friend, I might as well tell you something. The Sage Seal of Prophecy in your hand is also called the Sage Seal of Prophecy. The Sky Dome Emperor told you that the Sage Seal will automatically disappear after 3 years, but he was completely lying to you. After 3 years, the Voice of Prophecy will automatically activate. However, the Sky Dome Emperor didn't lie to you. When the Sage Seal is activated, it will explode with an extremely powerful force. Even a peak sky martial divine ancestor would not be able to withstand that kind of force. So, when the Sage Seal is activated, it will be the time of your death. Nia Tian's face froze, and his whole body stiffened. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Nia Tian, you better pray that you don't meet the prophecy child now. Otherwise, the Sage Seal will activate. You know the consequences. Mori Shire laughed, a playful look on his face. Nia Tian's eyes trembled, but he calmed down after a while. It turned out that the Sky Dome Emperor was more sinister than he had thought. The so-called Sage Seal of Prophecy was more dangerous than the sword hanging over his head. Once he found the prophecy child, the Sage Seal would activate. At that time, he would be instantly killed by the force that erupted when the Sage Seal was activated. Just as Mori Shire said, he didn't only have 3 years. He only had 3 years at most. If he met the prophecy child 3 years later, the Sage Seal would activate in advance. If he didn't meet the prophecy child, the Sage Seal would automatically activate after 3 years. It seemed that there was only one path in front of him, and that was death. The only difference was whether he would die earlier or later. Humph. This Sky Dome Emperor is even more sinister than me. At this moment, Mori Shire laughed, looking like he was watching a joke. Why is he doing this? Nia Tian asked as he looked at Mori Shire with a sullen expression. A strange light flashed in Mori Shire's eyes as he said, The Sage Seal of Prophecy is left for the prophecy child. Your mission is not just to find the prophecy child, but also to help the prophecy child activate the Sage Seal of Prophecy. When you meet the prophecy child, the Sage Seal of Prophecy will activate. After it is activated, the Sage Seal will automatically merge with the prophecy child. This will save the prophecy child a lot of trouble. What a treacherous heavenly emperor! Nia Tian's eyes trembled and his gaze turned cold. His entire being was emitting a frigid aura. Shao Chun had thought that the Sky Dome Emperor was a good person, giving him the Sage Seal of Prophecy and making him the High Priest of the 4 races. Although he had given Shao Chun a time limit of 3 years, it could be considered as him helping Shao Chun. Unexpectedly, the Sky Dome Emperor had laid a trap for Shao Chun from the start. Furthermore, Shao Chun had no choice but to jump into it. It was hard on Shao Chun to put in so much effort to find the prophecy child at the start. If Shao Chun really found the prophecy child, he would really be seeking death. Nia Tian, you do not have much time left. Even if you are lucky and do not meet the prophecy child, you only have 3 years left. Mori Shire looked at Nia Tian and laughed. Then, he said, however, I believe in you. With your ability, you should be able to find a solution. I really look forward to your growth. Then, we will have a chance to have a true peak showdown. After saying that, Mori Shire's figure flashed, leaving Nye Tian standing there with a sullen expression, unable to react for a long time. Chapter 40-29. Myriad Yuan Pavilion. Nye Tian, this seal is indeed a little troublesome. Qing Qi frowned in the room, and had an unsightly expression. When this seal is undone, will it be the moment I die? Nye Tian asked calmly. He was already prepared for this, and was not too surprised. Yes. Qing Qi nodded and said, when this seal is undone, it will release a strong force. Not to mention your martial physique, even a peak heavenly martial divine ancestor would be killed instantly. Furthermore, this seal is very strange. There is an internal force within it that is slowly awakening and strengthening. In a few years, the seal will be undone automatically. 3 years. Nye Tian smiled bitterly and said, this seal is called the Prophecy Sage Seal. It will be undone automatically after 3 years. The Prophecy Sage Seal? Qing Qi's gaze turned serious and he continued, there is something strange about this seal. It seems to be searching for a special aura. If it encounters this aura, it will probably be able to trigger the undoing of the seal. Yes. Nye Tian nodded with a helpless expression. The aura that the Prophecy Sage Seal was searching for was the aura of the Child of Prophecy. It looked like Mori Shire was not lying. This time, he was really tricked by the Sky Dome Emperor. Before returning to the Myriad Origin Pavilion, Nye Tian still held on to a sliver of hope that what Doomsday 12 had said wasn't true. He felt that since the Sky Dome Emperor was a human sovereign and was once a powerful expert, he should not be so despicable. However, it looked like he was too naive. Qing Qi was a great sealing master and a star venerate. It was impossible for him to lie to Nye Tian. Nye Tian, where did the Prophecy Sage Seal come from? Qing Qi asked with a serious expression. Nye Tian sighed and briefly explained the origin of the Prophecy Sage Seal. Then, he told Qing Qi about what he knew. Human Sovereign Sky Dome Emperor? Qing Qi frowned. This was a very unfamiliar name, but the prophecy child that Nye Tian mentioned caught his attention. Senior Qing Qi, do you have a way to suppress the Prophecy Holy Seal? Nye Tian looked at Qing Qi and asked nervously. No matter how optimistic he was, the current situation made him feel a little pressured. Most importantly, he had no understanding of the prophecy's child. If he suddenly encountered one, he would not be able to control it. I'm not sure. This seal is too complicated. I have to carefully understand every charm character of the seal. Qing Qi knitted his eyebrows and said in a heavy tone. This was related to Nye Tian's life, so he had to be careful. For the next 5 days, Nye Tian stayed with Qing Qi and asked the latter to focus on studying the Sage Seal of Prophecy. Unfortunately, after 5 days, Qing Qi still did not have a good way to break the Prophecy Holy Seal. Actually, this was not strange. The Sage Seal of Prophecy had been left behind by the Sky Dome Emperor, who had been honored as the human sovereign back then. Hence, the Sage Seal of Prophecy was definitely extraordinary. If it was broken by Qing Qi in a few days, that would really be strange. The third round of the 5 Academies assessment was about to begin. Nye Tian could only temporarily put aside the matter of the Sage Seal of Prophecy and head to Vast Cloud Square to participate in the Hidden Dragon Struggles test. However, Qing Qi was very worried. If Nye Tian encountered the legendary prophecy's child, then it would be troublesome. After all, those who could become the prophecy's child were definitely extremely rare peerless geniuses. The 5 Academies recruitment basically gathered all the martial arts geniuses in the entire all-heaven sacred world. Hence, the chances of Nye Tian encountering the prophecy's child was still quite high. However, Nye Tian had no choice. He had to participate in the 5 Academies assessment. Very soon, Nye Tian and Jun Jianxing arrived at Vast Cloud Square together. Tang 13, Tang Yuyu, Emo, Nye Qingwan, and the others also arrived, standing together with Nye Tian and the others. At this moment, in the sky above Haoyuan Square, There were many huge arenas that hovered in the sky like small mountains. Evidently, these arenas were supported by a formation. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to hover in the air. There are a total of 500 arenas. Looks like the third round won't take too long, Nietian muttered with a smile as he swept his gaze across the arenas in the air. The third round of the 5 Academies recruitment test was called the Hidden Dragon Struggle. It was a battle of 2 against 1 on the arenas. It was the time to truly test one's strength. 40 to 50,000 cultivators gathered in vast Cloud Square, causing the spacious space to seem much smaller. Outside the square, there was a dense crowd of people. They were all spectators. Vast Cloud Sacred City had spent quite a lot of money to accept the 5 Academies recruitment. Naturally, they had to find a way to earn it back. At this moment, those who were qualified to come here to spectate were all people with some status and strength in the All-Heaven Sacred World. After all, the 5 Academies recruitment and the Hidden Dragon struggle represented the peak strength of the All-Heaven Sacred World's younger generation. It might even decide the future strength of the entire All-Heaven Sacred World. After a while, a gray-clothed old man appeared with several dozen middle-aged cultivators and several hundred young cultivators. This person's aura is so powerful. Nietian could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw the leading old man. His heart shuddered as he was extremely surprised. The gray-clothed old man did not seem impressive, but his aura was extremely powerful. He was definitely a Sky Martial Saint ancestor. Seeing the gray-clothed old man and the others appear, the crowd could not help but become excited and began discussing. The people from the 5 Academies are here. The Hidden Dragon struggle is about to begin. The 5 Academies recruitment this time can be said to have gathered the martial geniuses of the All-Heaven Sacred World. Everyone will definitely do their best in order to enter the 5 Academies. However, the 5 Academies recruitment quota is limited after all. I wonder who will be able to stand out from the tens of thousands of people. The crowd discussed as they looked at the gray-clothed old man and the others. Their eyes flickered with excitement. Everyone, please be quiet. At this moment, the gray-clothed old man spoke. His voice was not loud, but it was boundlessly powerful. Everyone present could hear him clearly. As soon as he spoke, the entire square immediately fell silent. Everyone, I would like to introduce myself first. The gray-clothed old man said loudly. I's surname is Zhou, and my first name is Yu. I am an inner courtyard elder of the Heavenly Law Martial Palace. I am in charge of the third round of the 5 Academies recruitment, the Hidden Dragon struggle. An inner courtyard elder of the Heavenly Law Martial Palace. No wonder he is so powerful. Nietian's eyes slightly darkened as he thought to himself. Previously, EMO had introduced the 5 Academies to Nietian. Among them, the Heavenly Law Martial Palace was the strongest out of the 5 Academies. It was also the hardest to enter as the power behind it was the strongest power in the All-Heaven Sacred World, the Heavenly Sacred Pavilion. This Zhou Yu was an inner courtyard elder of the Heavenly Law Martial Palace, so it was natural that he was strong. Zhou Yu's strength indirectly proved the strength of the Heavenly Law Martial Palace and the Heavenly Sacred Pavilion. Heavenly Sacred Pavilion, I will have to interact with you more in the future. Nietian's eyes slightly darkened as he thought to himself. Although Nietian did not interact with the Heavenly Sacred Pavilion directly, he did interact with them indirectly. Chapter 40-30. Everyone was extremely excited when they heard Zhou Yu reveal his identity. The Heavenly Dao Martial Palace was indeed worthy of being the strongest among the 5 Academies. The most crucial Hidden Dragon tournament of the 5 Academies was hosted by the people from the Heavenly Dao Martial Palace. Everyone, you are all martial geniuses of the All-Heaven Sacred World. You represent the peak of martial talent in the world. Your strength will determine the future of the All-Heaven Sacred World, Zhou Yu continued with a thunderous voice. I look forward to your spectacular performance. The great era of martial arts was brought about by many martial geniuses. The recruitment of the 5 academies was a grand event in the all-heaven sacred world. Who didn't want to amaze the crowd on the Hidden Dragon competition stage and become the most dazzling genius? Afterwards, someone behind Zhou Yu stepped forward and introduced the rules of the Hidden Dragon competition. The Hidden Dragon competition was divided into 4 stages. The first stage was the group battles. All the cultivators would fight 5 rounds. Those who won 3 rounds or more would enter the winners group, while the others would enter the losers group. The second stage was the elimination stage. The cultivators in the winners group and losers group would fight 64 rounds. Every win would earn 1 point. Losses or draws would not earn any points. After 64 rounds, the top 1,000 cultivators in the winners group would advance, while the rest would be eliminated. The top 200 cultivators in the losers group would advance. The rest would be eliminated. The third stage was the group battles. The top 1,200 cultivators would be divided into 4 groups based on points. Each group would have 300 cultivators. They would fight one by one until the top 16 were decided. The 4 groups would make 64 in total. The fourth stage was the Hidden Dragon competition. The top 64 cultivators would fight each other. The winner would advance, while the loser would be eliminated until the martial champion of the 5 academies was decided. Everyone nodded after hearing the rules. They were clearly very satisfied. The Hidden Dragon competition was a grand event after all, so the rules were slightly more complicated but also fair. Even if one lost 1 or 2 rounds at the beginning, they would still advance as long as they were strong enough. The only exception would be if they were unlucky and encountered a strong cultivator in every round. Everyone, this old man has a few words to say. You must listen carefully. At this moment, Zhou Yu stepped forward again. He glanced across the crowd and said, "You are all rare martial geniuses. If any of you are injured, it will be a loss for the all-heaven sacred world. But on the martial arena, it's a battle between experts, so accidents are inevitable. In order to reduce casualties as much as possible, we have arranged a referee for every arena. Martial artists can admit defeat during a duel. In a critical situation, the referee has the authority to intervene in a battle between martial artists. Do you understand I's words?" After saying that, Zhou Yu's gaze swept across the crowd, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. "Sir, if the referee interferes in the battle, will he be too harsh on the warriors?" Someone shouted at that moment. Zhou Yu's eyes darkened slightly, and he said loudly, "Don't worry, the judges are all students from the 5 academies, and they can be considered your seniors. They won't be too harsh on any of you." "Well, that's good." Everyone nodded. Obviously, they agreed with the arrangement of the 5 academies. So those people are all students from the 5 academies. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly and he was shocked. Previously, he had thought that the hundreds of young cultivators behind Zhou Yu were teachers from the 5 great academies. In the end, they were actually students. The hundreds of young cultivators were all very powerful. Most of them were Tianjue Saint Emperors, and even the weakest one was in the 9th layer of the Heaven Tribulation. Then, Zhou Yu announced the official start of the Hidden Dragon battle. The hundreds of referees moved and landed on the arenas. The first battle of the first arena, Hidden Dragon number 999 versus Hidden Dragon number 3796. The first battle of the 7th arena, Hidden Dragon number 673 versus Hidden Dragon number 4352. The first battle of the first arena, Lulu, Hidden Dragon number 8739 versus Hidden Dragon number 3355. Then, voices were heard one after another. It was the start of the Hidden Dragon battle. As the voices were heard, the figures of the cultivators landed on the arenas one after another. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He took out his Hidden Dragon token, and confirmed that he was Hidden Dragon number 218. It wasn't his turn in the first round, but he wasn't in a hurry. He could take the opportunity to see how strong these cultivators were. Nye Tian, are you going to fight them too? At this moment, Xie Tianquang looked at Nye Tian and asked seriously. Yes. Nye Tian smiled faintly and agreed. He wasn't planning to bring Xie Tianquang here, but he had no choice since the latter insisted on following. Moreover, he was worried that Xie Tianquang would lose control again, so it was better to bring him along. Currently, Xie Tianquang's mind had returned to normal, and he looked like a normal teenager, except that he was a little bulkier. They're too weak. Xie Tianquang frowned, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and shook his head with a smile. Nye Tian was stunned, and he didn't know what to say. Indeed, to Xie Tianquang, the cultivators before him were indeed a little weak. Although Xie Tianquang's cultivation was only at the 9th level of heavenly righteousness, his battle strength was probably comparable to a 9th level heavenly tribulation expert. This was Xie Tianquang's battle strength when he didn't cultivate any martial skills. If he did, he would probably be able to fight against a heavenly enlightenment sacred emperor expert. In the past few days, Nye Tian had been thinking about finding a suitable martial art for Xie Tianquang to cultivate. Then, Nye Tian smiled and didn't say anything else. Soon, the first round of battles was about to end, and the second round of battles was about to begin. Stage 188, second round, Hidden Dragon number 208 versus Hidden Dragon number 520. At this moment, a voice was heard, causing Nye Tian's eyes to tremble with excitement. He was number 208, and he didn't know who his first opponent would be. Xiao Kuang, I'm going to fight someone later. This is a battle between the two of us. No matter what happens, don't interfere, understand? Before Nye Tian stepped onto the stage, he warned Xie Tianquang. He was worried that if he encountered an expert and was injured, Xie Tianquang would suddenly interfere. That would be terrible. Xie Tianquang nodded and smiled. Don't worry, as long as you're not beaten to death, I won't interfere. Nye Tian couldn't help but be stunned. When did this kid learn to joke? After that, Nye Tian's figure flashed and directly descended onto the arena. At the same time, another figure landed. Chapter 40-31. When Nye Tian saw that his opponent was actually the Sky Saintess, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He didn't expect that his first opponent would be the Sky Saintess. Nye Tian. The Sky Saintess was also stunned when she saw Nye Tian standing in front of her. Your Highness, I didn't expect that my first opponent would be you. Nye Tian smiled bitterly with a helpless expression. He originally thought that the 5 battles in the group stage would be very easy, but he didn't expect that his first opponent would be a martial leader-seated contestant. Needless to say, the Sky Saintess was very powerful. Back then, in order to stop Xiao Wanjie from killing indiscriminately, the Sky Saintess fought against Xiao Wanjie alone. Although she lost in the end, it was a glorious defeat. Xiao Wanjie was already very powerful, and with the support of the mysterious night phenomenon, even Nye Tian at his peak might not be a match for him. Nye Tian hadn't fought against the Sky Saintess head-on, but he could see how powerful she was. When she was in the 4 ancient sacred clans, the Sky Saintess had awakened the Hand of Desolation, the origin weapon of the desolate evil heart. Her cultivation had also broken through from the 9th level of heavenly righteousness to the 1st level of heavenly calamity. Her battle strength must have increased by several folds. Nye Tian estimated that if the Sky Saintess were to fight against Xiao Wanjie now, her chances of winning would be very high. It was indeed beyond his expectations to face such a powerful opponent in the first battle of the Hidden Dragon contest. At this moment, because of the appearance of the Sky Saintess, a large group of spectators gathered around Nye Tian's arena. They looked at Nye Tian with undisguised mockery and ridicule. This guy is really unlucky. He actually encountered the Sky Saintess in his first battle. Isn't he bound to lose? That's right. I think he should just admit defeat. That's not necessarily true. This guy is called Nyetian. I heard that he fought against the demon race's devil son, Xiao Wanjie, and even injured Xiao Wanjie. Stop bragging. How could a mere Tianyi level 2 great sage be a match for Xiao Wanjie? You must be dreaming. That's right, that's right. I think Xiao Wanjie can crush this kid with a single finger. Everyone was discussing. Obviously, they were not optimistic about Nyetian. Nyetian had used the 9th level Chaos Beast to defeat Xiao Wanjie during the first test in that alternate space. However, very few people had witnessed this scene. If one didn't see it with their own eyes and only heard about it, no one would believe it. Therefore, everyone was very sure that Nyetian would definitely lose. Your Highness, it seems like these people are very confident in you, Nyetian said with a faint smile. That's because they don't understand you. The Saintess of Heaven's gentle lips twitched slightly as she said, Nyetian, this is only the first phase of the Hidden Dragon battle. There's no need for us to fight to the death. Nyetian laughed and said, Could it be that your Highness is going to admit defeat? Nyetian would treat the Hidden Dragon battle seriously, no matter if it was the first or the last battle. Therefore, he could only win this first battle. Do you think that's possible? The Saintess of Heaven's eyes trembled slightly. Nyetian, let's have a simple competition. As she spoke, she extended her jade-like hand and drew a line in the air. Instantly, a circle of light with a radius of several meters appeared on the arena, surrounding her in the center. Nyetian's eyes narrowed. He didn't quite understand what the Saintess of Heaven meant. Nyetian, you have 3 moves. If I'm still in the circle after 3 moves, you lose. If I'm forced out of the circle, you win. How about it? The Saintess of Heaven smiled and said confidently. Your Highness, aren't you being a little too arrogant? Nyetian's eyes narrowed as he asked. You only need to answer. Do you dare or not? The Saintess of Heaven's eyes were sharp and full of confidence. I'll do as you say. The corner of Nyetian's lips twitched as he smiled playfully. The Saintess of Heaven clearly knew his strength, yet she still dared to be so bold. She was indeed a little overconfident. Come. The Saintess of Heaven frowned and spoke in a cold tone. Fine. Nyetian let out a low roar. His eyes instantly became extremely sharp, like 2 sharp blades that locked onto the Saintess of Heaven. Sensing the sharpness in Nyetian's eyes, the Saintess of Heaven's heart couldn't help but tremble in shock. Your Highness, be careful. Following this, Nyetian let out a low roar and his entire body moved. Like a ray of light, he charged straight at the Saintess of Heaven. However, the strange thing was that there wasn't much power or sword intent around his body. It was as if he simply flew over. What is this kid doing? Is he courting death? The crowd couldn't help but exclaim when they saw this. They all thought that Nyetian had gone crazy. In everyone's eyes, Nyetian was simply courting death by charging over like this. At this moment, if the Saintess of Heaven directly slapped him with her palm, Nyetian would either die or be seriously injured. The Saintess of Heaven also didn't expect Nyetian to do something like this. She couldn't help but be startled. In the next moment, she suddenly felt a tremendous eye power appear, causing her soul to tremble inexplicably. She then became absent-minded for a moment. When she came back to her senses, she was already outside the circle of light. Nyetian was standing right in front of her, looking at her with a smile. Nyetian, you. The Saintess of Heaven was stunned. She stared at Nyetian with her beautiful eyes, but she didn't know what to say. Your Highness, you've lost. Nyetian smiled and said in a slightly provocative tone. With that, he moved and jumped off the stage, leaving the Saintess of Heaven standing on the stage, unable to react for a long time. As for the audience below, they were also dumbfounded. They had no idea what had just happened in that instant. They only saw Nyetian gently push the Saintess out of the circle of light. It was very strange. Your Highness, this match. After a while, the judge looked at the Saintess of Heaven, evidently testing her attitude. After all, the Saintess of Heaven's identity was extraordinary. If she didn't accept the agreement just now, then it could only be assumed that Nye Tian had lost. This Saintess can afford to lose. The Saintess of Heaven frowned. After saying that cold, she moved and jumped off the stage. The judge took a long time to react and ruled that Nye Tian had won this match. The crowd was stunned for a long time before they reacted. They wanted to look for Nye Tian again, but he was already gone. Chapter 40-32. This guy's aura is a little strange. Nye Tian looked at the short martial artist and his eyes darkened. He had a feeling of unease in his heart. He sensed a dark aura from the short martial artist. It seemed to be some kind of bloodline power, but it was hidden very well. He's a martial artist from the Dark Angel clan. Just then, a figure came to Nye Tian and said with a frown, "Dark Angel." Nye Tian was stunned. He glanced at Emo and said, "No wonder there's a dark aura in his body. I'm afraid this battle won't be easy." Emo nodded slightly, unable to hide the worry in his eyes. Nye Tian's eyes darkened. He was also worried for Nye Qingwan. Nye Qingwan was only at the first stage of heavenly righteousness, while the Dark Angel clan martial artist was at the 9th stage of heavenly righteousness. Moreover, the bloodline power in his body was also very strong and posed a great threat to Nye Qingwan. "Nye Tian, do you know this girl?" Just then, Xie Tianquang came and asked Nye Qingwan. "She's my younger sister." Nye Tian nodded slightly. Sigh. Xie Tianquang glanced at Nye Tian and let out a sigh. "Your sister has already lost this battle. It's already good enough that she's still alive." Nye Tian furrowed his eyebrows and his face darkened. Xie Tianquang's mind had recovered and he was much more talkative. Moreover, he spoke without holding back and was even more troublesome than before. "Kid, watch your words." Emo looked at Xie Tianquang cold and said in a deep voice, "I'm just speaking the truth. Why are you so fierce?" Xie Tianquang's lips twitched as he said innocently. Nye Tian looked at Emo and signaled him not to stoop to Xie Tianquang's level. "Nye Tian, I'm afraid this crazy kid's words will come true soon." Just then, Fat Cat's voice was heard with a bitter smile. Nye Tian's expression changed and his heart sank. He could ignore Xie Tianquang's words, but it was different for Fat Cat. Fat Cat must have sensed something from that Dark Angel warrior. Otherwise, it would not have said such a thing. Boom! At this moment, the body of the Dark Angel warrior on the martial stage shook. Immediately, a boundless aura of darkness was released, instantly enveloping the entire martial stage. In the blink of an eye, the oppressive aura of darkness caused everyone to retreat, not daring to approach the stage. Damn it! Nye Tian's heart sank as he realized that the situation was far from good. That Dark Angel martial artist's strength was far more terrifying than he imagined. The bastards of the human race and the angel race shouldn't exist. Right at this moment, a low and gloomy roar sounded out from the martial arena, and then a dark figure charged out with a speed that was so fast that it couldn't be blinked. Nye Qingwan didn't even have time to react before she was struck by a violent force. She was sent flying and fell off the stage. "Qingwan!" Emo cried out when he saw this. His figure moved and caught Nye Qingwan in midair. Nye Qingwan's body was dripping with blood, and she had actually fainted. This! Nye Tian's eyes trembled violently. He did not expect the situation to change so quickly. In the hands of this Dark Angel martial artist, Nye Qingwan actually had no strength to fight back. Then, a shocking scene happened. Die! A loud roar came from the martial arena. The Dark Warrior actually rushed over. In midair, he slammed his palm down fiercely. The terrifying palm shadow was like a mountain as it blasted towards Emo and Nye Qingwan. The sudden scene caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air, and their expressions changed. No one expected that this warrior would be so ferocious. After defeating Nye Qingwan, he did not stop and insisted on killing the latter. Scram! Emo stood coldly in midair. His eyes were incomparably cold, revealing a terrifying frost intent. After a low roar, 4 pairs of cold demon wings appeared on his back. Immediately, a huge wave of cold demon chi appeared and froze the surrounding 10,000 meters. Boom! Then Emo slammed his palm. The surging cold demon chi was like a stormy sea, surging with killing intent as if it wanted to destroy everything. Bang! In the next moment, the 2 palms collided and the void shook. Suddenly, a terrifying force surged out, forming a huge airwave in the surrounding space. Emo's figure trembled, and he retreated thousands of meters before he could stabilize himself. On the other side, the Dark Angel Warrior also flew backward. After he stabilized himself, his face was as pale as paper. Emo, are you okay? Tion's figure moved and came to Emo's side. I'm fine, Emo replied. His eyes were fixed on Wan, and he was obviously very nervous. Don't worry. She's just temporarily unconscious. Her life is not in danger, Tion said solemnly as he sensed Wan's aura. The Dark Warrior's attack had seriously injured Wan, but it was not fatal. Someone from the Demonic Wings clan. At this time, the Dark Warrior's figure appeared again. He stood cold in the sky and stared at Emo. He said coldly, a little bastard of the Human clan and the Angel clan, and a scum of the Demonic Wings clan. You all deserve to die. It turned out that he killed Wan because she had the blood of both the Human clan and the Angel clan. As for Emo, he was a descendant of the Demonic Wings clan that was expelled from the Holy Realm. He also deserved to die. The one who deserves to die is you. Emo's cold eyes flashed with a cold light. He could no longer suppress his murderous intent. This person dared to kill Wan, and he had already touched his reverse scale. He deserved to die. Scum, you still dare to be so arrogant when you're about to die. The Dark Warrior smiled cold, and then his figure moved. 4 pairs of dark wings appeared on his back. He was actually a 4-winged angel. A 4-winged angel, coupled with the cultivation of Tiani 9th level. No wonder Wan was no match for him. Come on. Emo handed Wan to Tion. He roared and took a step forward. His whole body was filled with cold air like an iceberg. It was obvious that he was going to fight to the death with this person. At this time, the surrounding people were attracted by the fight. All eyes were focused on Emo and the Dark Warrior. The referees in the surrounding arenas were also watching from the side. They had no intention of stopping them. Strictly speaking, Emo and the Dark Warrior were not from the 5 academies, so there was no need for them to intervene. The Demonic Wings clan should not exist. At this time, a low voice sounded in the sky. Then, a figure in black appeared in the sky and stared coldly at Emo. Tion's eyebrows furrowed as his expression flickered involuntarily. Angels again. It seemed that Emo and Wan had angered the Angel clan. Then, several figures appeared and surrounded Emo. Oh no! When Tion saw this, his eyes trembled and his expression changed. He was very familiar with several of the Dark Warriors. They were the Holy Light Martial Intent Chi Chaochuan and the others. They were all genius Dark Warriors of the Angel clan. The Holy Light Martial Intent was ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list. Even if Tion fought against him, it would be very difficult. Chapter 4033. Numerous figures stood coldly high up in the sky. They were like mountains as they surrounded Emo in the middle with an overbearing aura. Seeing this, Tion's heart sank. He knew of Emo's talent and strength. It should not be a problem to deal with that dark angel, who was at the 9th level of heavenly righteousness. But facing so many people, it was very dangerous. Not to mention others, just the Holy Light Martial Intent alone had the strength to kill Emo. The Holy Light Martial Intent belonged to the strongest genius of the angel race, the Angels of Light. It was a terrifying existence ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list. Nie Tian had once fought with this person and won by luck. At that time, the holy light martial intent did not know Nie Tian's depth, so it was careless. Even now, Nie Tian was struggling to fight with the holy light martial intent. This group of angel race geniuses was led by the holy light martial intent. They wanted to surround and kill Emo. In this situation, even if Nie Tian took action, he could not stop everyone. There were many branches of the angel race, and they were all very strong. It was said that if all the angel races united, their combined strength would not be weaker than the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. Emo and Nie Qingwan, one was an abandoned member of the angel race, and the other had both human and angel bloodlines. Both were not tolerated by the angel race. Because of this, the two of them provoked the anger of the angel race. This is bad. Nie Tian's gaze sank slightly as he glanced at the referees in the surroundings. They didn't move at all, and it was obvious that they had no intention of interfering. These referees were not stupid. Of course, they did not want to offend the angel race. As for Emo and Nie Qingwan, so what if they died? It was no big deal. Given the current situation, it should be over soon. After all, Emo was only at the first level of heavenly righteousness. The surrounding crowd turned their attention over. Their expressions were heated. They were clearly prepared to watch the show. Is there an internal conflict among the angel race? That's a rare sight. I heard that kid is from the Wings of Frost demon race. He was chased out of the sacred world by the angel race. I don't know how he came back. An abandoned member of the angel race dares to appear in the recruitment grounds of the 5 academies. Isn't he courting death? Everyone discussed and looked at Emo with a trace of viciousness in their eyes. You trash of the Wings of Frost fiend race, you're actually still here? I spared you last time, but you won't be so lucky this time. At this time, the holy light martial intent grimly said. It took a step forwards and its entire body bloomed with light, like a blazing sun, blinding to the eyes. If you want to kill me, come at me. Emo's face was gloomy. He was not afraid in the slightest. With a low roar, the 4 pairs of cold demon wings on his back flapped, causing the cold aura around him to become even more intense. It was as if even the void was about to be frozen. Courting death. The holy light martial intent sneered and immediately moved. It thrust out its palm and a terrifying beam of light appeared. It was like a sharp awl, carrying with it an incomparably sharp aura as it shot towards Emo. Hiss hiss hiss. An ear-piercing sound could be heard wherever the beam of light passed, as if space itself was being forcibly torn apart. In the blink of an eye, Emo felt the killing intent that assaulted his face. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and his heart suddenly sank. At this moment, he felt the aura of death approaching, causing him to feel a sense of despair. Yes, his talent was strong, but the disparity between his and the holy light martial intent's cultivation was too great. This was an insurmountable chasm between them. Emo. As Nie Tian saw this scene, he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. His figure instantly moved, and the sky sword appeared in his hand. His entire body surged with a surging sword intent. Kaboom! However, right at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in the sky and forcefully shattered the life-reaping light pillar. Moreover, the power of the thunder impacted the holy light martial intent, forcing him to retreat 1,000 meters away. This sudden scene caused the other angel race martial artists to be stunned. Their expressions all changed, and their faces all became very ugly. No one thought that someone would intervene in the affairs of the angel race. What's going on? The crowd of onlookers was even more stunned. Their faces were filled with horror, but they didn't know what was going on. No one saw who it was that attacked. It's you. At this moment, the holy light martial intent stabilized its body. Its eyes looked into the void, and locked onto a tall and sturdy figure like a sharp blade. It roared coldly. Xie Tianquang. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. The person in the void was none other than Xie Tianquang. It's me. Xie Tianquang crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled. I want to see if your light or my thunder is stronger. You puff. The holy light martial intense pupils shrank. It was clearly angered by Xie Tianquang. Just as it was about to speak, its blood surged, and it vomited a mouthful of blood. Vomiting blood just like that? You can't even take a beating. The corner of Xie Tianquang's mouth twitched, and his face was filled with mockery. The holy light martial intense chest violently heaved. It was clearly infuriated. He was completely unfamiliar with the person in front of him, which made him even more inexplicably angry. If he had been defeated by a famous martial artist, it wouldn't have mattered. However, he had been defeated by an unfamiliar martial artist. As a top 10 genius of the Hidden Sky list, where would he put his face? At the same time, it was very strange. With Xie Tianquang's strength, he could definitely enter the top 10 of the Hidden Sky list, or even the top 5 or 3. However, it had never heard of such a person in the All Heavens sacred world. At this moment, the other angel martial artists were enraged. One of them stood up and shouted coldly, "Stinking brat, who are you? How dare you meddle in the affairs of the angel clan? Are you tired of living?" Xie Tianquang looked at the person and laughed. He took a step forward, causing the person to retreat in fright. Huff! Seeing this, Xie Tianquang curled his lips and said with disdain, "Didn't you say that I'm tired of living? Then come and kill me now." The person's eyes trembled, and he retreated several steps again. It was obvious that he was afraid that Xie Tianquang would suddenly attack. Even the holy light martial intent was injured by Xie Tianquang. How would he dare to attack? Nie Tian looked at Xie Tianquang, and his tensed face eased up a little. He was secretly amazed at Xie Tianquang's strength. A casual move could injure the holy light martial intent. It had to be known that with the cultivation of the holy light martial intent, even if Nie Tian fought with his full strength in his peak state, he might not be able to win. It was obvious that Xie Tianquang's combat strength was far above the holy light martial intent. On the other side, Emo was even more dumbfounded. He couldn't react for a long time. He didn't expect Xie Tianquang to be so terrifying. Thinking about how he was about to fight with Xie Tianquang just now, he felt some lingering fear. Because of Xie Tianquang's sudden intervention, everyone from the Angel clan was stunned. Even the holy light martial intense aura weakened. There are so many of you, but none of you can fight? Xie Tianquang's gaze swept over the Angel clan martial artists, and he couldn't help but laugh, appearing very arrogant. Chapter 40-34. The appearance of the black-clothed figure caused Nie Tian's expression to change as he cried out in surprise. The black-clothed figure stood there silently. There were not many fluctuations in the surrounding space, as if he did not exist. Martial artists, especially powerful martial artists, would cause a certain amount of pressure on space. And the stronger one was, the more obvious this pressure would be. Therefore, just by standing there, those powerhouses would give people the feeling of looking up to a great mountain. But this black-clothed figure could restrain his aura almost perfectly. It was truly terrifying. It's him. At this moment, the holy light martial intent saw the figure clearly and could not help but tremble. Its expression changed, and it could not help but cry out as if it had seen something terrifying. Him. When the other angel race martial artists heard the holy light martial intent's words, they seemed to think of something and their expressions changed. In their minds a name appeared, Qi Xinu. Qi Xinu. This name was a taboo existence in the angel race. The angel race was incomparably large. There were powerful branches such as the angels of light, the holy feather race, the dark angels, the blazing feather race, and so on. And if there were strong, there were weak. For example, the blue feather race, the golden wing race, and so on were relatively weak among the angel race. However, the blue feather race, the golden wing race, and so on were not the weakest of the angel race. The weakest angel race was the Chi clan. The Chi clan, as the name suggested, was the ugly angel race. The angel race revered a powerful bloodline and handsome appearance. And the Chi clan angels just happened to have neither. Generally speaking, members of the angel clan were more handsome than ordinary humans, while members of the Chi clan were extremely ugly, even worse than ordinary humans. In addition, the Chi clan's bloodline was generally very weak, so they were very disliked by the angel race. There were even many angel race members who did not recognize the Chi clan as part of the angel race. There were even people who suggested that the Chi clan was the shame of the angel race. They wanted to kill off all the Chi clan members, or have them leave the sacred world forever like the cold fiend-winged race. But later, these suggestions were too extreme and were not carried out. But even though the Chi clan was still a branch of the angel race, their situation was very bad. They would forever exist as the lowest race of the angel race. However, as the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Although the overall bloodline of the Chi clan was very weak, sometimes, genius warriors with powerful bloodlines would also appear. And Chi Shinu was a different kind of angel from the Chi clan. Chi Shinu's talents were extremely powerful, surpassing all the geniuses of the angel tribe. Inside his body was the supreme nine-winged bloodline of the angel tribe. Nie Tian once knew a member of the angel race, the holy feather race's saintess, Lan Xuani. The latter was an angel race cultivator who possessed the nine-winged supreme bloodline. Because Nie Tian had saved Lan Xuani's life, the latter gave him her angel sacred token. In the entire angel race, there were only a few angel sacred badges. Even the patriarchs of some large branches did not have an angel sacred badge, but Lan Xuani had one. This showed just how rare and powerful the nine-winged supreme bloodline was. Chi Shinu, as a member of the Chi clan, unexpectedly possessed the nine-winged supreme bloodline. It was easy to imagine how much turmoil this caused in the angel race. But because Chi Shinu was a member of the Chi clan, and his appearance was even uglier than the average Chi clan member, his existence became a taboo in the angel race, a name that could not be casually mentioned. But the angel race, in consideration of Chi Shinu's powerful bloodline, provided him with the best cultivation environment. Even so, Chi Shinu was still ridiculed by his fellow clansmen. Finally, one day, Chi Shinu could not stand it anymore and completely exploded, killing more than 100 geniuses of the angel race who were cultivating with him. This matter alarmed the upper echelons of the angel race. Many members of the angel race wanted to kill Chi Shinu. They felt that Chi Shinu had a great resentment towards the angel race, so keeping him alive was bound to be a disaster. It was better to kill him as soon as possible to eliminate any future troubles. But at that time, the elders of the angel race discussed for a long time, and in the end, they could not bear to kill a nine-winged supreme bloodline angel. They spared Chi Shinu's life, but imprisoned him in a forbidden area of the angel race. It was said that he could not take half a step out of this forbidden area for the rest of his life. In the past, the holy light martial intent had practiced with Chi Shinu, but later he went to another place to practice. Otherwise, he would have become a ghost in Chi Shinu's palm. The holy light martial intent never imagined that Chi Shinu, who had been imprisoned for the rest of his life, would appear during the hidden dragon struggle. Chi Shinu, why are you here? The holy light martial intent reacted. Its eyes surged with anger as it growled. Holy light martial intent, are you not happy that I'm here? Chi Shinu's eyes suddenly turned and he strangely smiled. His face was hidden under a black robe, so one could not see his face. But his eyes were like an abyss, and the coldness within them made one's heart palpitate. The holy light martial intent suddenly felt a threat. Its body trembled, and it took several steps back with a horrified expression. It hadn't seen Chi Shinu for several hundred years, but the latter's strength had already reached such a terrifying degree. The holy light martial intent felt that even the current hidden sky list's leader, the legendary martial genius, might not be Qi Shinu's match. Qi Shinu was too frightening. If he wasn't imprisoned, he would absolutely be a terrifying existence on the hidden sky list. Hey, do you want to fight me? At this time, Xie Tianquang spoke with a playful expression. You're a tough one, very interesting. Humph. Qi Shinu sneered. Although they think that I don't deserve to be a member of the Angel Clan with my appearance, I still consider myself a member of the Angel Clan. Since you've openly provoked the Angel Clan, of course I have to make a move. Today, I will let these arrogant geniuses of the Angel Clan see that the face they've lost will be picked up by me, a person they look down on. With that, Qi Shinu's figure moved, and like a black light, he moved several hundred meters forward. His movement technique was very strange. It didn't seem fast, but no one could see how he moved. Alright, let's do it. Xie Tianquang's eyes slightly darkened, and his expression became more cautious. He felt a strong threat from Qi Shinu. Nie Tian's eyes were bright, and he seemed even more nervous than Xie Tianquang. He had a faint premonition that Qi Shinu would be a terrifying opponent. Nie Tian, I'm afraid your little follower is going to suffer this time. At this time, little fat cat's voice rang out, with a hint of playfulness in it. Nie Tian frowned and his heart sank. Chapter 40-35. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he locked onto Qi Shinu. This person was powerful enough to make the sacred light martial intent and the others so wary. Plus, Fat Cat's reminder meant that Qi Shinu's strength was definitely not below Xie Tianquang's. The sacred light martial intent and the other angel martial artists all retreated 10,000 meters away when they saw Qi Shinu's figure move. They all looked nervous as if they were afraid of something. Is this Qi Shinu guy really that scary? Nie Tian's eyes darkened as his heart jumped to his throat. Beads of sweat even appeared on his forehead. He couldn't sense Qi Shinu's cultivation, which made him even more wary of this person. Kid, Shinu is about to make a move. Be careful. At this time, Qi Shinu's voice resounded in the air with a chilling intent. At the same time, his silhouette moved like a ghost. He turned into a ray of light and moved in the air with one step at a time. It was extremely strange. In the blink of an eye, the air was filled with Qi Shinu's silhouettes like a myriad of ghosts. This! Nie Tian's eyes trembled in shock. Qi Shinu's silhouettes had the same aura. It was impossible to tell which one was the real one. Petty tricks. You're looking down on me. Xie Tianquang's eyes darkened. He actually felt humiliated. With a low roar, lightning surged around his body. His entire body was like a lightning vortex, unleashing boundless power of lightning. It formed a lightning net in the air. This terrifying bolt of lightning whistled and rumbled, and the world seemed to tremble. These two guys are too scary. Everyone's eyes trembled violently as they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Xie Tianquang and Qi Shinu hadn't even fought yet, but they were already able to create such a shocking scene. Boom! Boom boom boom! In the next instant, the lightning net exploded with a violent power that shattered Qi Shinu's silhouettes wherever it passed. Xie Tianquang is indeed scary. I'm afraid even a tribulation sage monarch wouldn't be able to withstand this level of lightning power. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he thought. It seemed that his worry for Xie Tianquang was unnecessary. But then, a strange scene happened. Wherever the lightning passed, everything became clear. All the illusions were shattered. That was the strangest thing about it. The shadow was gone, and so was Qi Shinu's body. No one would believe that Qi Shinu was killed by the Thunderbolt net. Although the Thunderbolt net was powerful, it was not strong enough to kill Qi Shinu in a second. Qi Shinu was someone that could cause a proud genius like the Holy Light martial intent to remain silent. How could he die so easily? What's the point of hiding? If you're an expert, show yourself and fight. Xie Tianquang's eyes darkened as he growled. He was not stupid and knew that Qi Shinu was hiding. Little kid, you do have some skills. Unfortunately, your opponent is Xan Nu. Right at this moment, a low and gloomy voice resounded in the sky. It was like the sound of a funeral bell from the depths of hell, and it was filled with a horrifying and ghastly aura. Xie Tianquang suddenly sensed something. His expression changed, and he immediately turned around in shock. The moment he turned around, a black shadow flashed before his eyes. He then felt a tearing pain from his arm that instantly spread throughout his body. His expression changed as he saw one of his arms being forcefully severed by a strange and evil energy. Hiss! The horrifying scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble as they sucked in a breath of cold air. Their expressions were completely stiff. They did not see what happened at all. They only saw a black shadow flash by, and then there was a bloody scene. Xie Tianquang's arm was cut off. Not only was Qi Shinu's movement technique strange, but his attacks were also unpredictable. This aura is so evil. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as his heart was filled with shock and astonishment. Just a moment ago, he sensed the smell of blood in the void. This bloody aura was not emitted by Xie Tianquang's injuries. It was a dark, evil, and bloody aura. Without a doubt, this aura came from Qi Shinu. Even Nie Tian did not see the scene just now clearly. Qi Shinu's methods were simply too strange. Damn it! At that moment, Xie Tianquang roared violently. His eyes surged with lightning and fury, and his entire body seemed like it was about to explode. Pardon Tianquang! Upon seeing this, Nie Tian shouted as he dashed into action. Xie Tianquang's figure froze. He looked up at Nie Tian, and his bloodshot eyes trembled for a moment before calming down. Xie Tianquang, don't be rash, Nie Tian said in a deep voice, indicating for Xie Tianquang to control himself. If Xie Tianquang lost control, it would definitely cause chaos at the scene. Nie Tian had seen how terrifying Xie Tianquang was when he lost control. Back then, he, Mori Shire, and the Sky Saintess had not been able to completely suppress Xie Tianquang even with the power of Three Hearts resonance. Once Xie Tianquang lost control, everyone present would probably be in trouble. Nie Tian was even more worried that if Xie Tianquang released the Thunder Ape, it would attract uninvited guests. Since Yuan Hegan's people were interested in the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, it was highly likely that they were interested in the Thunder Ape. When Xiu Wanjie released the Night Phenomenon, he had also received a warning from Mori Shire. Therefore, no matter what, Nie Tian would not let Xie Tianquang use the Thunder Ape. Qi Shinu. At that moment, the Holy Light Martial Intent suddenly stood up and shouted, "Quickly kill this kid and that silver-haired martial artist. They are all enemies of the angel race." The silver-haired martial artist was naturally Nie Tian. Humph! Qi Shinu looked at the Holy Light Martial Intent and inexplicably sneered. She said with a playful expression, "I only said to attack. When did I say to kill?" "You." The Holy Light Martial Intent couldn't help but be stunned. It growled, "Qi Shinu, are you from the angel race?" Qi Shinu smiled strangely and said, "Now you remember that I am from the angel race. Back then, when I was cultivating with you, you never treated me as one of you. I've said it before, I'm making a move because I want all of you who think you're extraordinary to see that I, Qi Shinu, will be the one to pick up the face you lost. I want to tell you so-called high-level angels that our Qi race is no worse than any of your races." Every word and sentence was filled with extreme anger, hatred, and madness.